In the quiet of the late hours, a blue light glows in the dark, illuminating a face. Your body is still, perhaps resting in bed, but your mind is far from it. Your thumb moves in a familiar, hypnotic rhythm, scrolling through an endless river of images and words, none of which truly hold your attention. You are not looking for anything in particular. You are simply looking away from a quiet but persistent hum of restlessness inside. The room is silent, but your mind is a tempest, a storm of thoughts about yesterday's mistakes and tomorrow's demands. To-do lists, unheard conversations, and the invisible, crushing weight of who you are supposed to be all swirl in a chaotic dance. This experience, this quiet desperation in the glow of a screen, has become the signature of our modern lives. We are a generation rich in information but starved of meaning, connected to 1,000 friends online, yet feeling profoundly alone. We are caught in a relentless current of striving, consuming, and comparing, which leaves us in a state of chronic, low-grade anxiety, a constant feeling that we are not quite enough, that peace is a distant shore we can see but never reach. We are, in a very real sense, sleepless, even when we are wide awake, our minds never truly finding a place to rest. But what if this feeling, this deep human ache for stillness, is not a new problem? What if it is a timeless question? Thousands of years ago, a young prince, surrounded by every imaginable luxury, felt this same profound dissatisfaction. He saw that no amount of external pleasure could quiet the storms within, and so he left it all behind, embarking on a radical journey, not into the world, but into the deepest corners of the human mind. The path he discovered was not a religion that demands blind faith, but something more like a science, a practical, methodical exploration of our own consciousness. It is a set of tools, a map, designed to help us understand the nature of our own suffering, and to gently, compassionately guide us back to a state of inner freedom. This journey is not about escaping the world. It is about learning to live fully within it, to find a profound restfulness, an awakened sleep, right in the midst of life's inevitable chaos. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with the simplest thing imaginable, the one thing that has been with you every moment of your entire life. It begins with the breath. Before we can hope to understand the vast, complex landscape of the mind, we must first find a place to stand, a single, stable point in the whirlwind. We have been adrift in a storm of thought and feeling, and so our first task is not to fight the storm, but to drop an anchor. This anchor has been with you since the moment you were born, and it will be with you until the moment you die. It is the simple, rhythmic, life-sustaining flow of your own breath. We so often overlook it, taking its constant presence for granted, yet within its gentle rhythm lies the key to reclaiming our own presence, to finding our way back to the only moment that ever truly exists. This moment, right now. Why the breath? Because everything else is a ghost. Your thoughts are ghosts of the past, filled with regret and analysis, or they are phantoms of the future, woven from anxiety and expectation. Your emotions are fleeting visitors, powerful but impermanent, rising like waves and then crashing back into the sea. Even the world around you is filtered through the shifting veils of your perception and judgment. But the breath is real, and it is always now. It cannot be in the past. You cannot breathe yesterday's air. It cannot be in the future. You cannot take your next breath until this one is complete. It is rooted, unshakably, in the present. It is the physical manifestation of life unfolding, moment by moment. This makes it the most honest and reliable friend you can turn to. It demands nothing of you. It carries no story, no opinion. It is simply there. In a world that constantly asks you to be something else, something more, the breath allows you to just be. The practice itself is one of sublime simplicity. It is not about doing anything to the breath. It is not a breathing exercise in the way we might think of one. It is not about forcing long, deep breaths to artificially create a sense of calm. The invitation is far more subtle and far more profound. It is simply to rest your attention on the raw physical sensation of breathing. You might choose to place your awareness at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the slight coolness of the air as it enters and the subtle warmth as it leaves. Or perhaps you rest your attention on the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen, like a quiet tide, expanding on the in-breath and releasing on the out-breath. There is no right or wrong place to feel it. There is only what you can feel. The instruction is to let the breath be completely natural. If it is shallow, let it be shallow. If it is deep, let it be deep. Your only task is to feel it, to accompany it, as you would accompany a dear friend on a walk, without trying to direct their path. This is our first crucial lesson in letting go. Our entire lives, we are trained to fix, to manage, to control, to improve. When we encounter something, our instinct is to intervene. But here, with the breath, we practice a different way of being. We practice the art of allowing. We allow the breath to be exactly as it is, and in doing so, we begin to learn how to allow ourselves and our experience to be as it is. We are not seeking a special state. We are simply becoming intimate with the ordinary and discovering the extraordinary peace hidden within it. Now, as you attempt to do this, something will happen, something absolutely guaranteed to happen. Your mind will wander. After a few seconds, maybe only one or two, you will find you are no longer with the breath. You are suddenly in an argument you had yesterday, or you are planning what to have for dinner, or you are worrying about a bill that is due next week. You will be lost in a daydream, a memory, a fantasy. In these moments, it is so easy to feel that you have failed. A voice of judgment may arise, scolding you for your lack of focus, telling you that you are bad at this. This is the most important moment of the practice. The goal is not to have a mind that is empty or a mind that never wanders. That is a myth. The mind produces thoughts, just as the stomach produces digestive acids. It is what it does. The true practice, the moment of magic, is the instant you realize you have been distracted. That moment of, I've been lost in thought, is a moment of pure mindfulness. You have woken up from the dream of thinking. And what do you do when you wake up? You do not scold yourself for having been asleep. You do not analyze the dream you were just having. You simply, and with infinite kindness, guide your attention back to the anchor. You return to the feeling of the breath, the coolness at the nose, the gentle rising of the abdomen, and you begin again. You will do this 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. It does not matter. The practice is not in the staying, it is in the returning. Each time you notice your mind has strayed, and each time you gently escort it back, you are performing a revolutionary act. You are breaking the lifelong habit of being unconsciously carried away by your thoughts. You are strengthening a mental muscle of attention, but more importantly, you are strengthening the muscle of self-compassion. You are treating your own mind, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a lost child to be gently guided home. The Buddha, in teaching his own son, a young boy named Rahula, gave him the most beautiful and simple of instructions. He did not speak of complex philosophy. He said, Rahula, when you are breathing in a long breath, know, I am breathing in a long breath. When you are breathing out a long breath, know, I am breathing out a long breath. When you are breathing in a short breath, know, I am breathing in a short breath. When you are breathing out a short breath, know, I am breathing out a short breath. It is like a master carpenter observing his tool. He knows when he is making a long saw cut, and he knows when he is making a short one. There is no judgment. There is no preference for long cuts over short ones. There is only the clear, simple, knowing of what is happening as it happens. This is the heart of the practice. A simple, non-judgmental awareness of the present reality, as reflected in the mirror of the breath. This simple act of returning our awareness to the breath does more than just train our attention. It begins to heal a fundamental split in our being, the perceived separation between our mind and our body. Think of a time you felt anxious or frightened. What was your breath doing? It was likely fast, shallow, caught high in your chest. Think of a time you felt deeply relaxed and safe. Your breath was probably slow, deep, and centered in your belly. There is an unbreakable, two-way connection. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic breath, and a chaotic breath perpetuates a chaotic mind. It is a feedback loop that can keep us trapped in cycles of stress and unease. The breath is the bridge. It is the point where the non-physical world of thought and the physical world of the body meet. By bringing a gentle, conscious awareness to the breath, we are not forcing our mind to be calm. Instead, we are gently influencing one end of this bridge. We are inviting the body into a state of rest, and the mind, in its own time, often follows. By calming the rhythm of the body, we create the conditions for the mind to settle. We are not commanding the storm to cease. We are simply and quietly dropping our anchor, holding our ground with gentleness, and allowing the waters to, eventually, become still on their own. This anchor, this breath, is our first and most loyal companion on this journey inward. It costs nothing, it is always available, and it always brings us back to the only place where life can be lived. Having found our anchor, we now have the stability, the courage, to turn our gaze around and look with clarity at the very nature of the storm itself. With our attention resting gently on the breath, we have found a small island of stability in the turbulent sea of our experience. From this stable ground, we can now turn and face the water itself. We can look honestly at the nature of the restlessness, the anxiety, and the dissatisfaction that so often characterize our lives. In the language of the Buddha, this fundamental human condition is known by a single word, dukkha. Now, this word, dukkha, is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern philosophy. It is often translated simply as suffering, and this translation has led many to believe that the Buddhist path is pessimistic, morbid, and world-denying, a philosophy that claims life is nothing but pain and misery. But this is a profound misunderstanding. To understand dukkha is not to condemn life, but to embrace it with a radical honesty and a deep compassion. The Buddha was not a pessimist, he was a physician, a spiritual doctor. And the first step in any healing process is a clear and honest diagnosis. Stating the truth of dukkha is not a judgment, it is a diagnosis. It is the doctor gently saying, "Here is the source of the ache. Now that we see it clearly, we can begin the work of healing." In our modern world, we have become experts at avoiding this diagnosis. We distract ourselves with endless entertainment. We numb ourselves with consumption. We chase fleeting pleasures, all in an effort to ignore the persistent, low-grade hum of dissatisfaction that runs beneath the surface of our lives. But by daring to name it, by looking dukkha squarely in the face, we take the first, most courageous step toward freedom. To truly understand this diagnosis, we must see that dukkha manifests in three distinct, though interwoven, forms. The first is the most obvious, the kind of suffering nobody can deny. It is called dukkha, which can be translated as the pain of pain. This is the raw, overt suffering of life. It is the pain of a migraine headache, the sting of a harsh criticism, the grief that comes with losing someone you love. It is the anxiety of a difficult diagnosis, the ache of a broken bone, the sorrow of failure. This form of dukkha is an undeniable part of the human experience, a difficult but straightforward reality of having a body and a heart that can be wounded. The Buddhist path does not pretend this pain doesn't exist. It fully acknowledges it as a part of our shared existence. The second form of dukkha is more subtle, and it arises not from our pain, but from our pleasure. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the stress and anxiety that comes from the fact that nothing lasts. Even our most joyful moments are tinged with this subtle suffering, because a part of us knows they are fleeting. Think of a perfect, beautiful sunset. The joy of witnessing it is real, but it is mixed with the bittersweet knowledge that in a few moments, it will be gone. Think of the excitement of a new relationship, or a new job, or a new car. The initial happiness is powerful, but it inevitably fades, changes, or disappoints in some way. This is the dukkha of impermanence. We suffer because we cling to pleasant experiences, trying to freeze them in time, trying to build a solid home on the shifting sands of life. Our consumer culture is built almost entirely on this form of dukkha. We are promised that this one new product, this one more achievement, will finally bring us lasting happiness. But it never does, because the pleasure it brings is, by its very nature, temporary. The joy fades, and we are left once again with a sense of lack, sending us searching for the next fleeting fix. This is the pain of knowing that all things, good and bad, must pass. The third form is the most profound, the most subtle, and the most pervasive. It is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the deep background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our lives as mortal, vulnerable beings. It is a fundamental stress that comes from having a body that needs constant maintenance, that gets sick, and that will one day die. It is the anxiety of having a mind that is so often beyond our control, a mind that worries and judges and obsesses. It is the existential unease of being a self that feels separate and fragile in a vast, unpredictable universe. This is the dukkha that is present even when things are going well, even when there is no overt pain and no immediate loss. It is the quiet, nagging feeling that something is not quite right, the sense of being burdened by the sheer effort of just being a person. It is the stress of upholding an identity, of defending an ego, of navigating the complex web of relationships and responsibilities. It is the baseline tension that we carry with us every day, so constantly that we often don't even notice it until it is gone. It is the fundamental vulnerability of being a conditioned creature in a conditioned world. This understanding of the three forms of dukkha leads us to the most liberating insight of all. It is the difference between pain and suffering. This is often explained through the parable of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest and you are struck by an arrow. That is painful. The physical sensation is real and unavoidable. This is the first arrow. It represents the inevitable pains of life, the dukkha and viparinama dukkha that we all experience. Illness, loss, accidents, disappointments. These are the first arrows that life will inevitably shoot at us. But then, what do most of us do? We take out a second arrow and we shoot ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of our mind. We say, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. It's unfair. My whole life is ruined." We spin stories of catastrophe. We wallow in self-pity. We burn with anger. We freeze with fear. This entire mental and emotional proliferation, this story we tell ourselves about the first arrow, this is the second arrow. This is suffering. The Buddha's profound insight was that while we may not always have control over the first arrow, the second arrow is entirely optional. The pain of life is unavoidable, but the suffering we create around that pain is something we can learn to let go of. Getting cut off in traffic is a first arrow, a moment of pain or annoyance. Spending the next 10 minutes fuming, replaying the event in your mind, feeling your blood pressure rise, and arriving at your destination angry and agitated, that is the second arrow you have shot at yourself. Receiving a critical comment at work is a first arrow. Spending the rest of the day obsessing over it, questioning your self-worth, and feeling resentful towards your colleague, that is the second arrow. The first arrow is what happens to you. The second arrow is what you do with it. The entire spiritual path is the practice of learning not to reach for that second arrow. It is learning to tend to the wound of the first arrow with kindness and awareness, rather than inflaming it with fear and anger. So, dukkha is not a pessimistic statement that life is all suffering. It is a compassionate and empowering diagnosis that says, here is the pain of life, which is unavoidable. And here, separate from that, is the suffering we add on top of it, which is optional. By seeing this distinction, we are no longer helpless victims of circumstance. We see that the key to our own freedom lies not in changing the world to avoid all first arrows, but in changing our own minds so we stop shooting the second. But this begs the question, if our suffering is caused by our own reactions, by this second arrow, then what exactly is it inside of us that so compulsively reaches for it? What is this inner mechanism that seems so determined to turn pain into suffering? To answer that, we must look into the wild, untamed nature of our own minds. The reason we so compulsively shoot ourselves with that second arrow, the reason we so readily transform simple pain into prolonged suffering, is because the archer within us is wild and untrained. In the traditions of the East, this restless, reactive, and untamed aspect of our consciousness is given a wonderfully accurate and compassionate name: the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey in a vast jungle, a creature of pure impulse. It can never be still. It screeches and chatters. It swings from one branch to the next without rhyme or reason, grabbing a piece of fruit here, chasing a butterfly there, startled by a shadow, distracted by a sound. It is never fully at rest, always agitated, always moving. This is a perfect metaphor for the ordinary, untrained human mind. If you take a moment to observe your own thoughts, you will see this monkey in action. It jumps from a memory of something you said 10 years ago to a worry about a meeting next week. It swings to a fragment of a song you heard this morning, then leaps to a judgment about the person sitting across from you, then chatters with an imagined conversation that will never take place. There is no peace, no silence, just a constant, chaotic, and utterly exhausting internal monologue. To recognize this is not to admit a personal failing. It is to acknowledge a universal truth of the human condition. This restless monkey is not your enemy. It is simply the default setting of a mind that has not yet been taught how to be still. Why are our minds like this? Why this incessant, frantic energy? Part of the answer lies deep in our evolutionary past. For our ancient ancestors, this constant vigilance was a survival tool. The monkey mind was the lookout in the treetop, constantly scanning the environment for threats. A mind that was easily distracted by a rustle in the grass or a shadow moving at the edge of the woods was more likely to spot a predator and survive. We have inherited this primal operating system, a brain hardwired with a negativity bias, always on the lookout for what's wrong, what could be dangerous, what might hurt us. The problem is that we are now running this ancient survival software in the profoundly different environment of the modern world. The saber-toothed tiger has been replaced by an unpleasant email from our boss. The threat of starvation has been replaced by the fear of missing out we see on social media. Our monkey mind is still scanning for threats, but it finds them everywhere, in traffic jams, in news headlines, in unpaid bills, and in the imagined judgments of others. And our modern society acts like a trainer that rewards the monkey for being more and more frantic. From the moment we wake up, we feed it a diet of constant stimulation. The endless scroll of social media feeds, the 24-hour news cycle designed to provoke outrage and fear, the expectation that we should be multitasking at all times, the relentless pinging of notifications on our phones. Each of these things is like giving the monkey a shot of adrenaline. We are actively conditioning our minds to have shorter attention spans, to crave constant novelty, and to leap from one stimulus to the next. We train our minds to be distracted, and then we wonder why we feel so distracted, so fragmented, and so exhausted. The consequences of letting this monkey run wild are profound. It is the primary engine of our anxiety, endlessly rehearsing past failures and pre-living future catastrophes, flooding our bodies with stress hormones for dangers that exist only in our imagination. This constant mental activity is utterly draining. It is why you can sit at a desk all day, doing nothing physically strenuous, and feel completely depleted by evening. You have been wrestling with a wild monkey for 8 hours. But perhaps the greatest cost is that the monkey mind robs us of our own lives. When our attention is perpetually hijacked by the past or the future, we are never fully here. We miss the simple, profound beauty of the present moment. We eat a delicious meal without tasting it, because our mind is rehearsing an argument. We walk in a beautiful park without seeing the flowers, because we are lost in a worry about finances. We sit with a loved one, but we are not truly with them, because the monkey is chattering away about a dozen other things. Life becomes a blur, a series of moments that we never fully inhabit. So what can we do? How do we begin to tame this wild creature within? Our first instinct is usually to fight it. We get angry at our own minds. We shout at the monkey, Be quiet, shut up, focus. But what happens when you shout at a frightened, agitated animal? It only becomes more frightened and more agitated. Fighting with your mind is like wrestling with the monkey. You just create more chaos, more noise, and more suffering. The path to taming begins not with aggression, but with a radical act of kindness and curiosity. It begins with observation. Just as we learn to observe the breath, we learn to observe the mind. We take our seat, we find our anchor in the breath, and we watch the show. When a thought arises, we don't try to push it away. We don't judge it. We simply note it. There is a thought about work. There is a feeling of sadness. There is a memory. We can even label it gently in our minds. Planning, worrying, judging. This simple act of naming creates a space between you and the thought. It helps you realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that is able to see the thoughts. You are not the monkey. You are the calm presence that can watch the monkey. There is an ancient story that perfectly illustrates this process. A hunter, wanting to catch a monkey, put a patch of incredibly sticky tar on the ground in the forest. Soon, a curious monkey came along and poked the tar with its hand, which immediately became stuck fast. Annoyed, the monkey tried to pull its hand free using its other hand, but that hand too became stuck. In a panic, it tried to push itself away with its feet, only for both feet to get glued to the tar. Finally, in a last, desperate attempt, it tried to bite and chew itself free, and in doing so, got its face stuck as well. The monkey was now completely trapped, immobilized not by the hunter, but by its own frantic struggle. The tar is like a sticky thought or a difficult emotion. Our instinct is to struggle, to fight, to pull away with aversion. But the more we struggle, the more we engage with the thought, the more we get our other limsa, mind, our heart, our body stuck in the trap of our own reactivity. The solution, the path to freedom, is profoundly counterintuitive. It is to stop struggling. It is to relax around the stuckness. It is to observe the sticky thought with a calm awareness, without pouring more reactive energy into the trap. By doing this, the thought's power begins to weaken, and eventually, it lets go of us. Taming the monkey mind is not about getting rid of the monkey. It is about building a friendship with it. It is about patiently and gently training it, day by day, moment by moment. We give it a calm, stable place to rest the anchor of the breath. And every time it jumps away, which it will, we don't punish it. We notice where it has gone, and with infinite patience, we gently guide it back to the breath. Each return is an act of training, an act of kindness. This wild energy of the mind is what constantly pulls us away from the one place where true peace can ever be found. It keeps us living in the noisy, chaotic jungle of our own thoughts, while all along there is a calm, quiet clearing waiting for us. That clearing is the present moment. We have met the wild monkey of the mind, the frantic energy that swings restlessly through the jungle of our consciousness. And if we watch this monkey closely, we will notice it has two favorite destinations, two realms where it spends almost all of its time. These realms are the past and the future. It constantly drags our awareness back into the dense, thorny thickets of memory, or flings it forward into the misty, uncertain landscapes of anticipation. The one place the monkey rarely stays, the one place it seems deeply uncomfortable, is the quiet, open clearing of the present moment. Yet this clearing is the only place where life is actually happening. The past is gone. It exists only as a collection of fading footprints in the sand, as a series of neural pathways in our brain. The future has not yet arrived. It is a projection, a fantasy, a ghost that has not yet been born. The only time that is ever real, the only place you ever truly are, is right here, right now. The power to reclaim your peace, your sanity, and your life lies in the radical act of returning to this simple, profound, and ever-available reality. Let us look honestly at these two phantom worlds where we spend so much of our lives. The past is a land haunted by ghosts. We wander its corridors, endlessly replaying old scenes. We edit conversations in our head, thinking of the perfect thing we should have said. We bask in the dimming glow of past triumphs, trying to recapture a feeling that is long gone. Or, more often, we pick at the scabs of old wounds, reliving every hurt, every mistake, every moment of shame. This is a recipe for suffering. When we dwell on past mistakes, we create regret. When we dwell on how we were wronged, we cultivate resentment. We become prisoners of our own history, chained to events that are utterly unchangeable. No amount of thinking can alter 1 second of what has already occurred. To live in the past is to argue with a reality that has already won, an exhausting and fruitless battle that drains the life out of our present. The future, on the other hand, is a land of mirages. It is a vast territory of what if. We spend countless hours there, meticulously planning for every contingency, trying to construct a perfect, safe, and predictable tomorrow. Or we spend our time in its darker regions, the land of worry, rehearsing catastrophes that will likely never happen. This generates a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety. We are trying to solve problems that do not yet exist, bracing ourselves for impacts that are only imaginary. The future, just like the past, is not real. It is nothing more than a thought that you are having, right now, in the present moment. The suffering does not come from the future itself. It comes from our obsessive and fearful thinking about it in the only time that is real, the now. The monkey mind, by compulsively time-traveling to these two non-existent realms, ensures that we are almost never home for our own lives. The present moment, then, becomes our sanctuary. It is the only true refuge from the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow. What is the present moment? It is not a complicated philosophical concept. It is the simple, undeniable, sensory reality of your immediate experience. It is the feeling of the air entering your nostrils. It is the sensation of your feet on the floor. It is the sound of a bird singing outside your window. It is the warmth of the cup in your hands. When your attention is fully immersed in this raw, sensory data of the now, a remarkable thing happens. The chattering monkey of the mind falls silent. There is simply not enough mental bandwidth to simultaneously feel the texture of the wooden table under your fingertips and to worry about next month's finances. Anxiety is a future-oriented activity. Regret is a past-oriented activity. Neither can survive in the full, bright light of present moment awareness. The mind is like a narrow path. Only one traveler can pass at a time. When we intentionally place the traveler of sensory awareness on that path, the traveler of anxious thought must step aside. This is not about fighting our thoughts or suppressing them. It is about gently and deliberately choosing a different object for our attention. This is the refuge, and it is always available. You do not need to go anywhere or achieve anything to access it. You only need to come home to your senses. Your senses are the sacred portals to the present moment. They are the anchors that can pull you out of the turbulent waters of thought and into the calm harbor of the now. You can practice this anytime, anywhere. Right now, you can feel the weight of your body. Notice the points of contact between you and the chair, or the bed, or the floor. Feel the gentle pull of gravity. This is real. This is happening now. You can open your awareness to the world of sound. Instead of labeling the sound scar, refrigerator, voice simply listen to the symphony of vibrations. Receive the soundscape of this moment without judgment, as if it were music. You can look at any object nearby, perhaps your own hand. Look at it as if you have never seen it before. Notice the lines, the textures, the subtle variations in color, the play of light and shadow. See it without the filter of the word hand. See the raw, visual data of this moment. You can take a sip of water, or tea, or coffee, but instead of drinking it unconsciously, make it a practice. Feel the warmth or coolness of the cup. Notice the aroma before you drink, and then, as the liquid enters your mouth, truly taste it. Pay full attention to the journey of that single sip. Each of these acts is a small revolution. It is an act of returning home. The senses are the doorways out of the prison of obsessive thinking and into the vibrant, living reality of right now. There is a powerful Zen story that illustrates this truth. A man is being chased by a ferocious tiger. He runs as fast as he can until he reaches the edge of a deep cliff. With no other choice, he grabs onto a thick vine and swings himself over the edge. As he dangles there, clinging for his life, he looks down and sees another tiger on the ground below, looking up at him, licking its chops. His situation seems hopeless. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees two mice, one white and one black, emerge from a crack in the cliff and begin to gnaw on the very vine he is holding. Day and night, time is eating away at his life. The terror of his predicament is absolute. But just in that moment, he notices a single, wild strawberry growing from the cliff face, glistening red and ripe. With his one free hand, he reaches out, carefully plucks the strawberry, and puts it in his mouth. He savors it completely. The story ends with a simple line: how sweet it tasted. The tigers are the inescapable realities of our past regrets and our future fears, including our own mortality. The mice are the relentless, unstoppable passage of time. Most of us, in that situation, would be so paralyzed by the terror of the tigers and the mice that we would never even see the strawberry. The strawberry is the present moment. The story teaches us that even when surrounded by the very real dangers and difficulties of life, there is always a moment of sweetness, a moment of pure aliveness, a moment of simple reality that is available to us, if only we can bring our attention to it. This is the profound power of the present moment. To live in the now is to reclaim your life from the tyranny of thought. It is the continuous practice of coming home, again and again, to the anchor of your breath and the portal of your senses. It is not about creating a perfect, problem-free life. It is about finding the capacity for peace and joy right in the middle of your imperfect, problem-filled life. But this realization presents us with a challenge. Our entire society is built on the belief that happiness comes from getting what we want, from achieving our goals, from controlling our environment and our future. If peace can truly be found right here, right now, simply by accepting what is, then what does that say about our desperate, lifelong effort to control everything? It suggests that perhaps our search for happiness has been pointed in the wrong direction entirely. It suggests that the path to peace may not be one of gaining control, but of letting it go. We have discovered that a sanctuary of peace exists within the present moment, a quiet clearing in the jungle of the mind. To rest in this clearing requires a deep acceptance of what is, right here, right now. But this very idea runs contrary to one of the most fundamental and most stressful beliefs of our modern culture: the belief that happiness is a product of control. We are taught from a young age that if we can just manage enough variables, plan meticulously enough, work hard enough, and influence people correctly, we can engineer a life of predictable comfort and shield ourselves from pain and uncertainty. We act like grand chess masters, trying to anticipate and control every possible move on the board of life. And yet, we are constantly surprised, frustrated, and exhausted when the pieces refuse to behave as we command. This desperate, lifelong attempt to impose our will upon an untamable reality is the very source of our deepest anxieties. The path to peace, therefore, involves waking up from this grand illusion of control. To understand this, it is helpful to imagine that all the things in the universe can be placed into one of two baskets. The first basket is very small. This is your basket. It contains the few things you have some genuine, direct influence over. Inside this basket are your intentions, the motivations and attitudes that lie behind your actions. It contains your speech, the words you choose to say or not to say. It contains your physical actions, what you choose to do with your body from moment to moment. And most importantly, it contains your attention, where you choose to place the beam of your awareness. This small basket is your own garden. It is the only place where your work truly matters, the only domain where you can genuinely cultivate wisdom, kindness, and peace. Your true power in life is the power to tend to this garden with care. Then there is the second basket. This basket is infinitely vast. This is the universe's basket. It contains everything else. It contains the weather, the global economy, and the traffic on your way to work. It contains what other people think of you, what they say about you, and how they choose to behave. It contains whether or not someone loves you back, whether you get that promotion, whether your children will be happy. It contains the fundamental processes of life itself, getting sick, growing old, and the certainty of death. You can try to influence the things in this vast basket, but you cannot, ultimately, control them. Our most profound mistake, the one that causes us endless suffering, is that we spend most of our time and energy frantically trying to rearrange the items in the universe's basket, while our own small garden, our own basket, lies untended and overgrown with weeds. We try to force someone to love us, instead of cultivating a loving heart within ourselves. We obsess over what others think of us, instead of acting with an integrity that we ourselves can respect. We rage at the rain, instead of simply choosing to pick up an umbrella. This struggle to control the uncontrollable is the engine of our stress. Anxiety is the friction generated when our rigid desire for how things should be grinds against the fluid reality of how things are. When you try to control an outcome perfectly, you become paralyzed by perfectionism, afraid to even begin. When you try to control what others think, you become a chameleon, losing your own sense of self in a desperate attempt to please everyone. When you try to control the future and eliminate all uncertainty, you fill your present moment with worry and dread. The tension comes from this constant pushing, this resistance to the natural flow of life. It is like trying to command the tides of the ocean. You can stand on the shore and scream at the waves to stop, but the tide will continue to rise and fall, indifferent to your demands, leaving you exhausted, wet, and powerless. So, what is the alternative? The alternative is the gentle, yet powerful, practice of letting go. In our culture, these words can sound like defeat. They can imply apathy, irresponsibility, or becoming a passive doormat to life's circumstances. But this is not at all what they mean in a spiritual context. Letting go is not inaction. It is the essential prerequisite for wise action. It is a two-step process. First comes acceptance. You accept reality for what it is. You accept that it is raining. You accept that someone is angry. You accept that you have received a difficult diagnosis. You stop arguing with what is already true. This acceptance is not approval. You don't have to like it. You just have to stop fighting it. Only from this place of calm acceptance can the second step, wise action, arise. Once you accept that it is raining, you can act with intelligence. You can get an umbrella. You can cancel your picnic. You can choose to enjoy the cozy feeling of being indoors. Action born from resistance is stressful and often ineffective. Action born from acceptance is calm, clear, and powerful. Letting go, then, does not mean letting go of your responsibility. It means letting go of your obsessive attachment to a specific outcome that is not in your basket. You tend to your own garden with diligence. You act with kindness. You speak with truth. You work with integrity, and then you let go of the results, allowing the universe to take care of its own vast basket. There is a beautiful teaching story that illustrates this perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. They arrived at the bank of a wide, muddy river where a young woman stood, dressed in fine silks, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her clothes. Without hesitation, the senior monk walked over to her, scooped her up into his arms, carried her across the churning river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then turned and continued his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He followed his master, his mind racing with judgment. For hours he walked in agitated silence, replaying the event over and over. How could his master have done that? Monks are strictly forbidden to touch women. It was a violation of their sacred vows. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he burst out. "Brother, I cannot believe what you did back there. You broke our vows. You touched that woman." The senior monk stopped, looked at his young companion with a calm, kind gaze, and said simply, "Brother, I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story shows us the difference between acting and clinging. The senior monk performed a wise, compassionate act from his own basket and then let it go completely, remaining free and present. The junior monk, unable to control his master's actions or the past event, was still carrying the woman, the rules, and his own indignation as a heavy burden in his mind. He was suffering because he could not let go. We are all, so often, the junior monk. We carry our grudges, our worries, our past mistakes, and our anxieties about the future like heavy sacks on our back. The practice of letting go is the practice of noticing what we are carrying and gently, one by one, setting these burdens down. True freedom is found not in becoming the master of the universe, but in becoming the master of our own small basket and trusting the rest to the flow of life. But this begs a deeper question. Why is the world so uncontrollable in the first place? Why is it so resistant to our plans and desires? The reason is that the entire universe operates according to a fundamental, inescapable law. Understanding this law does not just make letting go possible, it makes it the most sane and natural response to life. This is the universal law of impermanence. We have seen how our desperate attempt to control the world, to command the tides of life, is a primary source of our anxiety. We stand on the shore of our lives, exhausted from trying to build permanent castles in the shifting sand. And this raises the deeper question, why? Why is the world so untamable? Why does everything we try to grasp so tightly slip through our fingers? The answer lies in the universe's most fundamental and uncompromising law. It is a truth that governs everything from the life cycle of a distant star to the fleeting thought that just passed through your mind. This law is called impermanence, or in the ancient Pali language, anicca. Everything changes, nothing lasts. Everything that has a beginning has an end. At first, this truth can sound terrifying. It speaks of loss. It reminds us that everything we love, relationships, our achievements, our youth, our very lives, will one day change or disappear. Our instinctive reaction is to recoil from this idea, to deny it, to build walls of distraction and false hope to protect ourselves from it. But the path to wisdom invites us to do the opposite. It asks us to turn and look deeply into the face of impermanence, for in its seemingly grim features, we can discover a source of profound peace, freedom, and even joy. Impermanence is not a flaw in the system, it is the system itself. Life is not a static photograph, it is a flowing river. The water that touches your hand now is not the same water that touched it a moment ago, and it will be gone in the next. The majestic mountain that seems so solid and eternal is, over eons, being worn down by wind and rain. The seasons turn, a tree sheds its leaves and is reborn in the spring. Our own bodies are in a constant state of flux, with cells dying and being replaced by the billion. To wish for permanence is to wish for life to stop. It is to wish for stagnation and death. The truth is, impermanence is our greatest ally in times of suffering. Because this law is impartial, it applies not only to our joys, but to our sorrows as well. No pain is permanent. No state of despair lasts forever. No difficult situation is immune to the law of change. When you are lost in a dark valley of grief, or fear, or confusion, the wisdom of impermanence is a candle in the darkness. It whispers the great truth. This, too, shall pass. The clouds of your suffering, no matter how dark and heavy they seem, are just clouds. They are not the sky. The sky of your awareness is vast and open, and the clouds will, inevitably, drift on and dissolve. This knowledge does not magically erase pain, but it gives us the strength to endure it, knowing that it is a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident. When we begin to truly internalize this truth, our relationship with happiness and pleasure is transformed. Most of our suffering around pleasant experiences comes not from the experiences themselves, but from our frantic clinging to them. When we feel happy, a subtle panic often arises alongside it. How can I make this last? What if I lose this feeling? We try to grasp the happiness, to solidify it, which is like trying to capture sunlight in a jar. It cannot be done. Understanding impermanence allows us to hold our joys with an open hand. We don't stop enjoying the beautiful sunset, the loving embrace, or the moment of success. In fact, we experience them more deeply, more fully, because we are not burdened by the anxious project of trying to make them permanent. We can savor the sweetness of the strawberry, precisely because we know it is fleeting. This brings a quality of preciousness to our lives. We can love fully, laugh freely, and appreciate beauty without the desperate need to possess it. When the moment changes, as it always will, our hand is already open. There is no struggle, no sense of being robbed. We can gracefully let it go, creating space for the next moment to arrive. Similarly, our relationship with pain and difficulty begins to soften. When an unpleasant emotion like anger, fear, or sadness arises, our instinct is to resist it. We declare war on it. We think, I shouldn't be feeling this. I have to get rid of it. This resistance, this aversion, is the second arrow. It is pouring fuel on the fire of our own discomfort. But when we meet that difficult emotion with the wisdom of impermanence, our approach changes. We can acknowledge its presence without panicking. We can say to ourselves, here is the feeling of anxiety. It is unpleasant, but I know it is just a temporary visitor. It is a weather pattern passing through my inner world. This allows us to stop fighting with ourselves. We can create a space of gentle, patient awareness for the emotion to exist in. We learn to surf the waves of our feelings instead of trying to stop the ocean. And paradoxically, an emotion that is met with this kind of accepting awareness often loses its power and moves through us much more quickly than one we fiercely resist. We learn that we are more resilient than we thought, that we can be the calm, spacious sky that allows all weather, good and bad, to pass through. This truth is not just an abstract philosophy, it is the living reality of your own experience right now. You can observe it directly. Bring your attention to your body. Notice the endless river of sensations. An itch appears on your arm. You feel it for a moment, and then it is gone. A feeling of warmth from your clothes gives way to a feeling of coolness. Your breath is the ultimate teacher of impermanence, a constant, rhythmic cycle of arising and passing away. Now, watch your mind. Where do your thoughts come from? They seem to appear out of nowhere. They linger for a moment, and then they vanish, replaced by the next one. Have you ever had a single thought that stayed with you forever, without changing? It is impossible. Thoughts are like bubbles in water, forming, rising, and popping in a continuous, unstoppable flow. The same is true for your emotions. None of them are solid or permanent entities. They are transient waves of energy. There is a profound story that captures the heart of this teaching. A young woman named Kisa Gotami was utterly devastated when her only infant son died. Mad with grief, she refused to accept his death and carried his small body through her village, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some pitied her, some thought she had gone mad. Finally, a wise man told her, "I cannot give you the medicine you seek, but you should go to the Buddha. He can help you." Kisa Gotami rushed to the Buddha and pleaded with him to save her son. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can make a medicine for you, but to do so, I require one ingredient. You must bring me a single mustard seed from a house in the village where no Wanino parent, no child, no spouse, no servantess ever died." Hope surged in her heart. A single mustard seed seemed like such a simple task. She went from door to door, and at every house, the people were kind and offered her a mustard seed. But when she asked her question, "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" the answer was always the same. One family had lost a father, another had lost a daughter, a third had lost a beloved servant. House after house, the story was the same. The living are few, they told her, but the dead are many. As the day wore on, the truth began to penetrate her wall of grief. She realized that her devastating loss was not a unique curse. It was the shared, universal inheritance of all human beings. Death and change were not an injustice that had happened to her. They were the very fabric of life. With this profound realization, the fire of her desperate clinging began to cool. She understood. She took her son's body to the charnel ground, let him go, and returned to the Buddha, not for medicine, but for wisdom. The wisdom of impermanence is the medicine Kisagotami found. It does not erase our pain, but it places it in a universal context, transforming our isolated suffering into a sense of shared humanity. It teaches us that to fight against change is to fight against life itself. It encourages us to loosen our grip, to open our hands, and to participate in the beautiful, heartbreaking, and ever-changing dance of life. But this deep understanding of constant flux leads us to an even more profound, and perhaps more unsettling, question. If everything is always changing, if my body, my feelings, my thoughts are all just a temporary flow, then what am I? What is this self that I am so determined to protect and preserve? If all the components are impermanent, where is the permanent me that owns them? It is like looking for the river when there is only the flowing of water. This inquiry leads us directly to the heart of the Buddha's most liberating teaching, the key that unlocks the final door of our conceptual prison, the truth of no self. We have journeyed into the heart of impermanence, the universal law that all things are in a constant state of flux. We have seen that our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, and the world around us are like a flowing river, never the same from one moment to the next. This understanding, while liberating, naturally leads to the most profound and perhaps unsettling question on the spiritual path. If everything is constantly changing, what about the one thing that feels solid, continuous, and permanent? What about me? Who is the I that is thinking these thoughts, feeling these feelings, and experiencing this life? From the day we are born, we build our entire world around this central character, this protagonist in our personal story. We believe there is a stable, enduring self at the core of our being, a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler behind the feelings. But the wisdom of the Buddha invites us to turn the powerful lens of inquiry upon this very assumption. It asks us to look for this self we hold so dear, and it gently suggests that what we will find, or rather, not find, is the key to ultimate freedom. This exploration is known as anatta, or no self, and while it may initially sound like an annihilation, it is in fact the shedding of a heavy, unnecessary burden. So, if there is no solid, separate self, what is this experience we call me? The Buddhist analysis offers a brilliantly practical answer. It suggests that what we mistake for a permanent self is, in fact, a dynamic, interactive process, a temporary gathering of 5 distinct elements, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. Think of them as 5 bundles of changing energies that, when they come together, create the illusion of a solid individual. The first aggregate is form. This is your physical body, with all its senses. But if you look closely, is it truly a solid, separate thing? Your body is composed entirely of non-you elements. The food you have eaten, the water you have drunk, the air you are breathing right now. It is in a constant state of change, borrowing materials from the universe and returning them. It is not a thing you have, but a flowing process you are participating in. The second aggregate is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These feelings are categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day brings a pleasant feeling. A harsh word brings an unpleasant feeling. The sensation of your clothes against your skin is likely neutral. These feelings are fleeting, impersonal weather patterns. Not my feelings, but simply feelings that arise and pass away in awareness. The third aggregate is perception. This is the mental function that recognizes, labels, and interprets the raw data from our senses. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and labels it tree. It hears a vibration and labels it car horn. Our perceptions are not objective truth. They are heavily conditioned by our past experiences, our culture, and our language. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a broad and powerful category that includes all of our mental habits, our intentions, our opinions, our biases, our desires, and our fears. The restless monkey mind lives here, chattering away. These are not the commands of a central CEO, They are conditioned impulses, patterns of energy that have been grooved into our minds over a lifetime. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is not some grand, all-encompassing soul, but rather the simple faculty of awareness itself. There is eye consciousness that arises when the eye sees a form, ear consciousness when the ear hears a sound, and mind consciousness when the mind knows a thought. It is like a flashlight that illuminates whatever it is pointed at, but it is not a permanent knower. It arises in dependence on an object and a sense organ. This, then, is the self, a flowing, interdependent dance of body, feeling, perception, mental habits, and momentary consciousness. It is a verb, not a noun. It is a process, not a thing. This can be a difficult concept to grasp intellectually, so a famous ancient story is often used to make it clear. It is the story of the Buddhist sage, Nagasena, and the Greek king, Melinda. The king, a sharp and inquisitive ruler, wanted to test Nagasena's wisdom. He asked him, "What is your name, venerable sir?" Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a convenient name, a designation, and that no permanent person could be found. The king was intrigued and challenged him. Pointing to his own magnificent chariot, he asked, "Is this chariot the pole that pulls it?" "No, your majesty," Nagasena replied. "Is it the axle? Number? Is it the wheels, the frame, the reins, or the whip?" To each question, Nagasena calmly answered number. Then the king pressed, "Is the chariot all of these parts combined?" "No, your majesty." "Is it something else, separate from all of these parts?" "Number." The king, triumphant, exclaimed, "Then, venerable sir, you are lying. There is no such thing as a chariot." Nagasena remained calm. He turned the question back on the king. "Your majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you walk?" The king admitted he had come by chariot. Nagasena smiled gently and said, "Your majesty, you have spoken truly. Just as the word chariot is a convenient name, a useful designation we use when the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the frame are all assembled and functioning together. So Nagasena, or self, is a convenient designation, a name we use when the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness are gathered together in a temporary arrangement. If you search for the chariot apart from its parts, it cannot be found. And if you search for the self apart from these five changing processes, it too cannot be found. This story reveals the heart of the Anatta teaching. There is no little king or queen sitting on a throne inside your mind, directing the show. The sense of a continuous, unified self is a beautiful illusion, a story the mind creates by stringing together fleeting moments of experience. So why is this a liberating insight and not a terrifying one? Because this phantom self, this ego, is the source of most of our suffering. We spend our lives in a state of exhausting anxiety, trying to protect, defend, and enhance this fragile illusion. When we see through it, we are freed from this burden. So much of our social anxiety comes from worrying about what others will think of me. When we realize this me is a fluid process, not a solid statue, the fear of judgment begins to lose its power. Who are they judging? A thought from 5 minutes ago? A feeling that has already passed? When someone criticizes or insults you, the sting of taking it personally diminishes. Who is the target of the insult? If there is no solid, unchanging self, an insult is like an arrow shot into empty space. It has nothing to stick to. Most importantly, understanding anatta is the antidote to selfishness. If the boundary between me and you is ultimately an illusion, if we are all just flowing processes of these five aggregates, then a natural empathy and compassion arises. Your suffering is not fundamentally different from my suffering. We are all part of the same interconnected dance. To be clear, the teaching of anatta is not a denial of your existence. You are here. You are reading these words. You are experiencing life. The teaching is not about what you are not, but about what you truly are. You are not a separate, static, isolated thing. You are a process, a confluence, a verb. You are a wave in the great ocean of existence, distinct in your form for a moment, but never separate from the water. The practice, then, is to observe this directly in your own experience. As you watch your breath, as you notice your thoughts, you can gently ask, who is watching this? Who is thinking this? Don't search for an intellectual answer. Simply let the question create a space of not knowing. In that space, the tight grip of the ego begins to loosen, and a sense of lightness and freedom can emerge. But this great teaching raises another crucial question. If there is no permanent self, no continuous soul that travels from one moment to the next, then who is it that reaps the rewards of good actions or suffers the consequences of harmful ones? How can cause and effect work without a stable agent to experience it? To answer this, we must re-examine the concept of karma, not as a system of cosmic justice for a self, but as an impersonal, natural law of energy that flows through this very process we call a life. We arrive now at a great paradox, a deep and fascinating question that arises from our journey. We have seen how the solid, unchanging self we believe in is an illusion, a temporary gathering of changing processes, like King Melinda's chariot. But if there is no permanent me, no continuous soul that persists through time, then who is it that experiences the consequences of actions? How can there be moral accountability? The answer lies in a word that is famous throughout the world, yet is almost always misunderstood. That word is karma. In the West, karma is often imagined as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping, a system of mystical fate or divine retribution, where good deeds are rewarded with good fortune and bad deeds are punished with misfortune. But this is a distortion. The true meaning of karma is far more subtle, more psychological, and ultimately more empowering. It is not a system of punishment for a self, but rather an impersonal, natural law of the universe, as fundamental and reliable as the law of gravity. It is the law of cause and effect applied to the flow of our own conscious experience. At its simplest, the word karma or karma in the original Pali literally means action. It is not the result, it is the cause. Every intentional action you perform, every word you speak, and even every thought you think is a form of karma. The most helpful way to understand this is through the metaphor of a garden. Your mind is a fertile garden. Every time you act with a specific intention, you are planting a seed in that garden. An act of generosity plants a seed of generosity. A moment of anger plants a seed of anger. A thought of compassion plants a seed of compassion. These seeds do not simply vanish after the act is over. They settle into the soil of your consciousness. And when the conditions are right, the right amount of sun, water, and time, they will sprout and bear a corresponding fruit. This is not a mystical process. It is a deep psychological truth. When you act with patience, you are not just performing an isolated act. You are strengthening the neural pathways of patience, making it slightly easier to be patient the next time. When you lash out in anger, you are watering the weed of anger, reinforcing that habit and making it more likely to arise in the future. We are, from moment to moment, shaping the very landscape of our own minds through the seeds of our actions. Now, here is the most crucial element, the key that unlocks the entire teaching. The Buddha declared, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma." The true power of an action lies not in the external deed itself, but in the mental state, the volition, the intention behind it. This moves karma from a crude system of external judgment to a sophisticated science of inner ethics. Let us consider an example. Imagine you are walking, and you accidentally step on an insect, killing it. The external act is one of causing death. Now, imagine a different scenario where you see an insect and, with a feeling of malice, you deliberately crush it. The external act looks very similar, but the intention, the karma, is worlds apart. The first act, being unintentional, plants no significant karmic seed. The second act, born of a mind of violence, plants a potent seed of cruelty in the garden of your mind. Or consider two people who each donate a sum of money to a person in need. The first person gives from a place of genuine compassion, feeling a sense of connection and a sincere wish for the other's well-being. The second person gives because they feel socially obligated, perhaps because others are watching, and they do so with a mind of resentment or superiority. The external action is identical, yet the karma could not be more different. The first person has strengthened the beautiful habit of compassion. The second has reinforced the toxic habits of pride and resentment. The universe does not judge the action. The action itself, fueled by its intention, conditions the mind of the actor. It is always about why we do what we do. This understanding dismantles the idea of a cosmic judge or an external karma police force. The law of karma is impersonal and self-operating. We are not punished for our anger, we are punished by our anger. To live with a mind full of hatred, suspicion, and resentment is itself the fruit of past hatred, suspicion, and resentment. It is a painful and miserable way to live. You begin to create the very world you perceive. If you constantly plant seeds of hostility, your mind will filter all incoming data through a lens of hostility. You will see threats where there are none. You will interpret neutral comments as attacks, and you will experience the world as a fundamentally unsafe and aggressive place. You become the architect and the sole resident of your own perceptual prison. Conversely, if you consciously and consistently plant seeds of kindness, forgiveness, and generosity, your mind itself begins to change. You start to notice the good in others. You feel more connected, more secure, and more at ease. The world has not changed, but your experience of it has been transformed. You have built a palace of peace from the inside out. This leads us to the most hopeful and empowering aspect of karma. We are not prisoners of our past. We are the heirs of our past karma. But in every single moment, we are the creators of our future karma. The momentum of our past actions is like the current of a river, pushing us in a certain direction. But the present moment is our paddle. With our present intention, we can choose to steer, to change course, to resist the pull of old habits, and create a new trajectory. The story of the dreaded murderer, Angulimala, is the most powerful illustration of this truth. Angulimala, which means finger garland, was a terrifying figure who lived in a forest and terrorized the local population. He had vowed to kill 1,000 people, and he wore a gruesome necklace made from the fingers of his victims. He was caught in a vortex of the most horrific negative karma imaginable. The Buddha, seeing that Angulimala still had a spark of goodness deep within him, walked alone and unarmed into that dangerous forest. Angulimala saw him as his final victim and began to run after him. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking calmly, Angulimala could not catch up to him. Exhausted and confused, he yelled, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, without turning, replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This profound and puzzling statement shocked Angulimala to his core. The Buddha explained that he had stopped creating violence, hatred, and suffering, while Angulimala was still running on the endless wheel of causing harm. In that moment, a powerful transformation occurred. The seed of Angulimala's past violence was met with the seed of the Buddha's unconditional compassion. Angulimala threw down his weapons, renounced his violent life, and became a monk. Through immense effort and practice, he purified his mind and eventually became fully enlightened. His story teaches us the supreme power of the present moment. No past is so dark that it cannot be transformed by a change of heart, a change of intention, right now. Karma is not a fixed destiny written in stone. It is a living, dynamic energy, and we have the power to shape it in every moment. So, karma is the law of cause and effect that operates on the stream of consciousness itself, resolving the paradox of who experiences the results of actions. The stream is conditioned by past actions, and the quality of the stream is altered by present actions. This is a teaching not of fate, but of radical responsibility. It places the power for our happiness and our liberation directly in our own hands. This, then, brings us to a very practical point. If we are to be skillful gardeners of our own minds, we must learn to distinguish the wholesome seeds from the unwholesome one. And before we can plant a beautiful garden, we must first learn to identify and remove the most common and destructive weeds that choke the soil and block out the light. In the Buddhist path, these primary mental weeds are known as the 5 hindrances. We have embraced the profound responsibility of being the gardeners of our own minds, understanding that the seeds of our intentional actions, our karma, shape the world we experience. But any good gardener knows that before you can cultivate beautiful flowers and nourishing vegetables, you must first learn to identify and skillfully handle the weeds. In the inner garden of the mind, the most common and persistent weeds are known as the 5 hindrances. These are not personal moral failings or sins to feel guilty about. They are universal patterns of mental and emotional energy, common to all human beings, that arise and temporarily obscure the natural clarity and peace of our minds. They are the primary obstacles we encounter when we try to quiet our thoughts and find stillness, both in meditation and in the midst of our daily lives. To know them is to be prepared for them, and to be prepared is the first step toward freedom. The Buddha used a powerful and beautiful analogy to describe the nature of the mind and these 5 hindrances. He said that the mind in its natural state is like a bowl of clear, still water. In this state, it can perfectly reflect the world as it is, the moon, the stars, your own true face. It is lucid, calm, and insightful. The 5 hindrances are the 5 things that can disturb this water, distorting the reflection and preventing us from seeing clearly. Learning to work with these hindrances is the art of allowing the water of the mind to become clear and still once more. The first hindrance is sensory desire. This is the mind's tendency to lean forward, to grasp at pleasant experiences through the 5 senses. It is the I want mind. It is the craving for a delicious taste, the longing for a beautiful sight, the endless search for a pleasant sound or a comfortable feeling. In our modern world, this hindrance is on full display. It is the compulsive scrolling through social media, hunting for the next interesting image or video. It is the constant daydreaming about a future vacation, a new purchase, or a romantic encounter. When sensory desire takes over the mind, it is like pouring brightly colored dyes into the bowl of water. The water is no longer clear. You cannot see your reflection. All you can see is the vibrant, captivating color of your own wanting. The antidote is not to renounce all pleasure, but to cultivate wisdom around it. It is to observe the desire as it arises, to feel its energy in the body without being compelled to act on it. It is to notice its impermanence, seeing that the craving itself comes and goes, and that the satisfaction it promises is always fleeting. The second hindrance is ill will or aversion. This is the opposite of sensory desire. It is the mind's tendency to push away, to resist, and to reject unpleasant experiences. It is the I don't want mind. Its energy ranges from subtle irritation and annoyance to simmering resentment and explosive rage. This is the anger that flares up when you are stuck in traffic, the bitterness you feel towards a colleague who was promoted ahead of you, the deep-seated resentment from a past hurt. When ill will arises, it is as if the bowl of water has been placed upon a raging fire. It begins to bubble and boil violently. In such a churning, agitated state, it is impossible to see any reflection at all. The antidote to this fiery state is the cooling water of loving kindness, or metta. It is the practice of intentionally cultivating warmth and goodwill, first for yourself, and then extending it outwards, even and especially to the person or situation that is causing you irritation. It is the practice of trying to understand the pain and suffering that might be causing another person to act in a harmful way. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor. This is not just physical tiredness, it is a mental state of heaviness, dullness, and lethargy. It is a thick fog that descends upon the mind, making it sluggish, unworkable, and resistant to any effort. This is the feeling of being unmotivated, the desire to endlessly procrastinate, the sinking into a state of aimless, mindless channel surfing. It is the mind that says, I just can't be bothered. When sloth and torpor are present, it is as if the water in our bowl has become stagnant and a thick layer of slimy, green algae has grown over its surface. No light can penetrate this murky film, and nothing can be reflected in its dull surface. The antidote is to gently arouse energy. This can be physical, standing up, changing your posture, splashing cool water on your face, or doing walking meditation. It can also be mental, deliberately cultivating interest and curiosity in your present experience, or reflecting on the preciousness and rarity of this human life, a reflection that can inspire us to make good use of our time. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry. This is the agitated, jumping monkey mind at its most active. Restlessness is the mind's inability to settle on any one thing, constantly flitting from thought to thought, from sensation to sensation. Worry is a particular form of restlessness where the mind gets caught in obsessive loops, usually about past regrets or future anxieties. This is the feeling of being wired but tired, of being unable to relax, your mind buzzing with a nervous energy that has nowhere to go. When restlessness and worry take hold, it is as though a strong wind is blowing across the surface of our bowl of water, whipping it into a frenzy of countless ripples and waves. The reflection of the moon is shattered into 1,000 distorted, unrecognizable fragments. The primary antidote here is to return again and again to the anchor of the breath. Grounding the attention in the simple, physical reality of the body can calm the winds of anxious thought. Establishing a sense of routine and simplifying one's life can also help to reduce the fuel for this agitated state. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt. This is not the intelligent, healthy doubt that encourages investigation and seeks truth. This is a cynical, corrosive, and immobilizing form of doubt. It is the voice that whispers, "This practice is pointless. It won't work for me. I'm not capable of this. Maybe the whole teaching is a fraud." This kind of doubt drains our energy and paralyzes our efforts before we even begin. When skeptical doubt is present, it is as if our bowl of water is not only muddy and filled with sediment, but has been placed in a completely dark room. We cannot see our reflection because we doubt it is even there, and so we refuse to light a candle or open a window. The antidote is to find sources of wise faith. This can mean seeking guidance from a trusted teacher, reading inspirational texts, or simply recalling the moments of clarity, however brief, that you have already experienced in your own life. It means having the courage to suspend judgment for a time and commit to the practice wholeheartedly, to test the teachings for yourself and see what results they bear. Learning to work with these 5 hindrances is the core of mindfulness practice. The strategy is not to wage a violent war against them, but to meet them with a calm and wise awareness. First, you recognize the hindrance. Restlessness is here. Second, you accept its presence without judgment. It is okay that this is arising. Third, you investigate it with curiosity. What does this feel like in my body? And fourth, you practice non-identification. I am not this feeling of doubt. I am the awareness that is seeing the doubt. By doing this, you stop feeding the weeds with your energy, and their power over you begins to wither. You realize they are not your enemies, but simply impersonal weather patterns passing through the vast sky of your mind. But our approach to this work must be skillful. If we fight these hindrances too aggressively, we fall into an extreme of harsh effort. If we simply give in to them, we fall into an extreme of lazy indulgence. The path that skillfully navigates between these two pitfalls, the path that balances energy and ease, is known as the middle way. We have now met the 5 primary hindrances, the common weeds that grow in the garden of the mind, obscuring its natural clarity. When we encounter these powerful energies, desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness, and doubt, our instinctive reaction is often to jump to one of 2 extremes. The first extreme is one of aggression and force. We try to violently rip the weeds out, fighting with our own minds, criticizing ourselves for our lack of focus, and generating even more inner turmoil. The other extreme is one of indulgence and apathy. Overwhelmed by the task, we simply give up, letting the weeds take over the garden completely, sinking into the familiar comfort of our distractions and habits. Both of these paths are dead ends. There is, however, a third way. It is a path of profound skill, sensitivity, and wisdom. It was the very first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment, the foundational principle for the entire spiritual journey. It is known as the middle way. This is not a mediocre compromise or a lazy path of moderation. It is a razor's edge of balance, the artful way between the extremes that leads directly to peace. To understand the middle way, we must first understand the Buddha's own life, for his journey was a living exploration of these two extremes. He began his life as Prince Siddhartha, born into immense wealth and privilege. He was surrounded by every imaginable form of sensual pleasure, the finest foods, the most beautiful music, luxurious palaces, and a life meticulously shielded from any sight of suffering, old age, or death. He lived in the very heart of sensual indulgence. He had everything that our modern world tells us should bring complete and lasting happiness. Yet, in the midst of this perfect life, he felt a deep and gnawing spiritual unease, a sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. He realized that chasing pleasure, no matter how refined, was a fruitless and exhausting game. Happiness was a fleeting ghost that could never be captured. This was the failure of the first extreme, and so he embarked on a radical journey, leaving the palace behind to become a wandering ascetic, determined to find the truth. He threw himself into the other extreme, the extreme of self-mortification. He sought out the most renowned masters of austerity and outdid them all in his severe practices. He starved his body until his ribs protruded like the slats of a broken shed, and his spine could be felt through his stomach. He practiced holding his breath until he felt excruciating, mind-splitting pain. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed his body to the blistering heat of the day and the freezing cold of the night, believing that by conquering the body, by punishing it into submission, he could liberate his spirit. For 6 long years, he walked this path of extreme self-denial, but at the end of it all, he was no closer to enlightenment. He was simply emaciated, weak, and on the verge of death. He realized, with profound clarity, that torturing the body was just another dead end, another form of obsession with the self that led only to more suffering. His great awakening came in a moment of simple insight. Collapsed by a river, he accepted a humble bowl of milk rice from a village girl. This simple act of nourishment, of kindness to his own body, gave him the strength to walk to a nearby tree, sit down, and vow not to rise until he had found the truth. He had discovered the middle way. This ancient story is our story. In our modern lives, we are constantly pulled between these same two extremes. The extreme of indulgence is the dominant message of our culture. It is the path of materialism and consumerism, the belief that happiness lies in the next purchase, the next promotion, the next vacation, the next dopamine hit from our screens. It is a life of frantic, striving, burnout, and an endless cycle of craving and disappointment. The other extreme, modern asceticism, is more subtle. It can manifest as a harsh inner critic that relentlessly judges us as lazy, unworthy, or not good enough. It can be a kind of spiritual puritanism that sees any form of simple joy or pleasure as a weakness. Or it can be a pattern of self-neglect, sacrificing our sleep, our health, our relationships, and our well-being in the obsessive pursuit of a goal, whether that goal is career success or even a misguided and aggressive spiritual practice. The Buddha's teaching on the middle way is perfectly captured in his lesson to a monk named Sona. Sona had been a famous lute player before joining the monastic order, and he was practicing with a fierce, painful intensity, walking in meditation until his feet were raw and bleeding. Seeing that Sona was becoming discouraged and making no progress, the Buddha went to him. "Sona," he asked, "you were a skilled musician. Tell me, if the string of your lute is tuned too tightly, what is the result?" Sona replied, "Venerable sir, the string will snap." The Buddha then asked, "And if the string is tuned too loosely, what is the result?" Sona answered, "Sir, it will not make any sound." "But what happens, Sona, when the string is tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but is balanced just right?" Sona's face lit up. "Then, sir," he said, "it will produce a beautiful and harmonious sound." The Buddha smiled. "In the same way, Sona, energy that is too strained leads to restlessness and agitation, and energy that is too slack leads to laziness and sloth. Therefore, you should cultivate a balance of energy. Tune the instrument of your mind to be not too tight and not too loose. Find the middle way, and you will find your path to peace. This is the art we are called to practice. It is the art of tuning the instrument of our own being. This applies directly to how we care for our body. Our body is not an enemy to be punished, nor is it a god to be worshipped. It is the precious instrument we have been given to realize awakening. It must be cared for with wisdom. We must feed it nourishing food, give it adequate rest, and treat it with kindness. A well-cared-for instrument is the only kind that can produce beautiful music. The middle way also applies to our emotional life. The extreme of indulgence is to be completely drowned by our feelings, swept away by the drama, and to believe, "I am this anger," or "I am this sadness." The extreme of denial is to suppress our emotions, to pretend they don't exist, to push them down into the basement of our psyche where they fester and grow toxic. The middle way is to practice mindfulness, to allow a feeling to be present in our awareness, to feel its energy in the body, without getting lost in its story, and without trying to violently reject it. We observe it with a balanced attention, like a perfectly tuned lute string that can vibrate with the music of life, but does not snap under the tension. The middle way is not a fixed point, but a dynamic and intelligent path of balance that we must find from moment to moment. It is like walking a tightrope. It requires our constant, sensitive awareness to make small adjustments, leaning neither too far to one side nor the other. By walking this skillful path, we stop wasting our precious energy on the futile extremes of fighting ourselves or indulging ourselves. With a body that is cared for and a mind that is at ease, we create the perfect foundation, a stable platform from which we can begin to actively cultivate the most beautiful and transformative qualities of the human heart. And the first of these qualities, the one that cools the fires of all suffering, is the quality of compassion. Having found our footing on the middle way, with an instrument that is tuned neither too tight nor too loose, we can now begin to play the beautiful and transformative music of the heart. We have spent our time so far clearing the ground, understanding the nature of our minds and the world. Now, we begin the joyful work of active cultivation. The first and most essential quality we plant in our garden, the quality that is the true antidote to the fire of suffering, is compassion, known in the Pali language as karuna. Compassion is not mere sentimentality or a sad feeling. It is the active trembling of the heart in the presence of pain, an empathetic resonance with suffering, combined with the sincere and powerful wish for that suffering to come to an end. In a world that often mistakes hardness for strength, compassion can be seen as a soft and vulnerable weakness. But the journey inward reveals the opposite. Compassion is one of the most courageous, resilient, and transformative forces in the universe. To truly understand compassion, we must first distinguish it from its poor cousin, pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. It creates separation. When we feel pity for someone, we are implicitly saying, "I am here, safe and sound, and you, poor thing, are down there in your unfortunate situation." Pity establishes a hierarchy of helper and helpless. It can feel condescending and often reinforces the other person's sense of isolation. Compassion, on the other hand, meets another at eye level. It is founded on the profound recognition of our shared humanity and our shared vulnerability to suffering. Its message is not, "Poor you," but "I am here with you." It acknowledges that the pain you are feeling is not foreign to me. I too have known fear, loss, and confusion. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separation and creates a bridge of connection from one heart to another. It is empathy, the ability to feel with another, combined with the active aspiration for their relief. It is the heart's authentic response to seeing that we are all in this together. Before we can hope to extend genuine compassion to others, We must first learn to offer it to the one person who is with us every moment of our lives, ourselves. This is perhaps the most difficult and most radical practice for those of us raised in cultures that prize self-criticism as a motivator. We carry within us a harsh inner judge, a relentless critic that catalogues our every mistake and berates us for our imperfections. This inner voice is the primary source of the second arrow. It is the very opposite of compassion. The practice of self-compassion is the conscious decision to silence that inner critic and to instead treat ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend who was struggling. Think about it. If a good friend came to you, distraught over a mistake they had made, would you shout at them, call them worthless, and tell them they were a failure? Of course not. You would offer them a comforting word. You would reassure them that everyone makes mistakes, and you would encourage them to be gentle with themselves. Self-compassion is simply learning to turn this same warm, supportive attention inward. Many of us fear that self-compassion is a form of self-indulgence, that if we stop criticizing ourselves, we will become lazy and complacent. But all evidence shows the opposite is true. Self-criticism breeds fear, anxiety, and a reluctance to take risks, leading to stagnation. Self-compassion, on the other hand, creates a sense of inner safety that gives us the resilience to get up after we fall, to learn from our mistakes without being crushed by them, and to move forward with courage. You cannot pour water for others from an empty cup. Trying to be a compassionate presence in the world while maintaining a state of inner warfare with yourself is a direct path to resentment and burnout. Learning to be a good friend to yourself is the essential foundation for all other forms of heartfelt connection. This practice requires immense courage. True compassion is not a soft, passive state. It is a feat of profound bravery. It takes courage to be willing to turn towards our own pain, to sit with our discomfort, our fear, and our shame without immediately resorting to our habitual distractions. We must be brave enough to allow our own hearts to break, and it takes an even greater courage to be willing to bear witness to the suffering of others. The easy path is to turn away, to numb ourselves, to keep the pain of the world at a safe distance. Pity allows us to do this. It keeps a buffer between us and the one who is suffering. But true compassion asks us to close that distance, to be present, to allow our hearts to be touched by the reality of another's pain. This requires us to be vulnerable. It is the unwavering strength of the open heart, a strength far more powerful than the brittle armor of indifference. The Buddha himself provided the ultimate example of this embodied, courageous compassion. There is a moving story of a monk in his community named Puttagata Tissa, who was afflicted with a terrible disease that caused his body to break out in oozing sores. He was so ill that he was lying in his own filth, and the other monks, unable to bear the sight and smell of him, had abandoned him completely. When the Buddha heard of the monk's condition, he did not just offer words of comfort from afar. He went to the hut where the monk lay dying. With his own hands, the Buddha began to boil water. He gently washed the sick monk's body, cleaning his wounds and changing his soiled robes, all with a calm and loving presence. After he had settled the monk comfortably, he gathered the other monks together and taught them a powerful lesson. He said, "Monks, you have no mother and no father here to care for you. If you do not care for one another, then who else will? Know this, whoever would tend to the sick and suffering is, in truth, tending to me." This story shows that compassion is not a lofty idea, but a hands-on, fearless act. It breaks down all barriers of status, purity, and personal comfort. It is the recognition that in caring for the most vulnerable among us, we are performing the highest spiritual practice. We can actively cultivate this courageous quality through meditation. The practice begins, as it must, with the self. Bringing a hand to your heart, you can silently repeat phrases like, "May I be free from my suffering. May I be safe and at peace." After spending time establishing this foundation of self-compassion, you can then extend it outwards. Bring to mind a loved one and hold them in your heart, wishing, "May you be free from your suffering. May you find peace." Then, you can expand your circle of compassion to include a neutral person, someone you see often but don't have strong feelings about, like a cashier at a store. Recognizing that they too have their own hidden struggles, you can wish, may you also be free from your burdens. The most advanced practice involves extending compassion to a difficult person, someone who has hurt you. This is not about condoning their actions, but about recognizing that their harmful behavior almost certainly springs from their own deep well of suffering. With this wisdom, you can wish, may you be free from the anger and pain that causes you to create suffering for yourself and others. Finally, you radiate this wish outwards in all directions, to all beings without exception, known and unknown, near and far. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. No, karuna, compassion, is the heart's tender, courageous response to the reality of pain. It is the force that connects us to ourselves and to all of life. It is the unwavering wish for all beings to be unburdened. As we cultivate this wish for all to be free from suffering, another, related quality naturally begins to blossom. We begin to wish not only for the absence of their pain, but for the presence of their happiness. This active, positive, and radiant wish for the well-being of all is the next great music of the heart. It is called loving kindness. Having opened our hearts with compassion to the reality of suffering, we now turn to its bright and radiant counterpart. If compassion is the heart's response to pain, then the next quality we cultivate is the heart's proactive wish for happiness. This is the practice of loving kindness, or metta in the Pali language. Metta is the gentle, yet powerful, radiation of unconditional goodwill. It is the sincere wish, flowing from the deepest part of our being, for all beings, without exception, to be happy, healthy, and at peace. Our common understanding of love is often conditional and transactional. It is a love that says, I will love you if you meet my needs, or I love you because you are mine. It can be possessive, demanding, and easily wounded, but metta is radically different. It is a love that expects nothing in return. It is not about liking someone or even approving of their actions. It is a fundamental recognition of our shared aspiration for happiness. Just like you, every being, from the smallest insect to the most difficult human, wants to be happy and to avoid suffering. Metta is the alignment of our own heart with this universal wish. It is the practice of becoming an inner sun, radiating warmth and friendliness in all directions, shining on the flower and the weed, the saint and the sinner, without discrimination. This unconditional quality of metta is what makes it so transformative. It is not dependent on how others treat us or what is happening in the world. It is a strength we cultivate within, a portable source of warmth that we can carry with us always. This inner warmth is the direct and powerful antidote to the cold, constricting states of fear, anger, and hatred. Think of a moment when you felt intense anger or resentment. It is a tight, hot, and painful state. The mind is constricted, the body is tense, and the world appears hostile. Now, consider the feeling of genuine goodwill. It is open, spacious, cool, and peaceful. It is psychologically impossible for these two states to occupy the mind with equal intensity at the same moment. You cannot simultaneously be consumed with rage towards someone and genuinely wish for their happiness. Therefore, the regular, intentional practice of metta is like pouring cool, clear water on the smoldering embers of our anger and resentment. It systematically starves the roots of ill will. It doesn't mean we will never feel irritation again, but it means we no longer have to feed it, to let it grow into a consuming fire. Similarly, metta is a powerful antidote to fear. Fear arises from a sense of separation and threat. It is the feeling of a small, vulnerable me against a big, dangerous them or it. Fear constricts the heart and builds walls. Metta does the exact opposite. It is an act of dissolving boundaries. By intentionally cultivating a sense of kinship and shared aspiration with all of life, we begin to feel less isolated, and the world begins to feel less threatening. The practice of wishing all beings well fosters a profound sense of connection, a feeling of being at home in the universe. This underlying sense of safety and friendliness naturally soothes the anxious, fearful mind. The heart that is filled with the warmth of metta has less room for the cold grip of fear. Like any skill, loving kindness can be cultivated through a formal, structured practice. This meditation is a gentle and beautiful process of opening the heart in expanding circles. As with compassion, the practice must always begin with yourself. It is incredibly difficult to offer genuine goodwill to others if you are at war with yourself. Finding a comfortable posture, you can bring a hand to your own heart, a gesture of friendship, and silently repeat phrases that resonate with you. Classic phrases include, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease." You repeat these words not as a magical incantation, but as a sincere offering, allowing the warm feeling behind the words to gradually permeate your being. Once you have established a foundation of loving kindness for yourself, you expand the circle to include a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom it is easy to feel warmth and appreciation. You bring their image to mind, and you extend the very same wishes to them. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease. Feel your heart opening and connecting with their well-being. The next circle includes a neutral person, someone you neither like nor dislike, perhaps a store clerk or a neighbor you see in passing. By extending these wishes to them, you are stretching the muscle of your heart, training it to offer kindness beyond your circle of personal preference, recognizing their full humanity and their own quiet wish for happiness. The most challenging and often most liberating stage is to extend metta to a difficult person. Bring to mind someone with whom you have conflict or feel resentment. This is not an exercise in forcing yourself to like them or condoning any harmful actions. It is a profound practice for your own freedom. It is the recognition that this person's harmful actions likely spring from their own suffering, and from that place of wisdom, you offer them a basic wish for well-being, for your own sake. You wish for them to be happy, because happy people do not cause suffering to others. This act begins to free you from the heavy chains of your own resentment. Finally, you let the circle become infinite. You radiate the feeling of metta outwards from your heart in all directions, front, back, left, right, above, and below. You extend it to all beings, in all places, all people, all animals, all creatures seen and unseen, friends, enemies, and strangers. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. The power of metta is not just a gentle sentiment, it is a force that can pacify the most violent energies. This is illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the enraged elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, in an attempt to assassinate him, arranged for the royal elephant to be intoxicated, transforming it into a rampaging, unstoppable beast, and then unleashed it in the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, people fled in terror. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He did not run, he did not fight, he simply stood his ground, and from his heart, he radiated an immense, powerful, and unwavering field of pure loving kindness directly at the charging animal. The elephant, in its drunken rage, was met with this powerful wave of pure, unconditional gentleness. Its fury began to subside, its charging slowed to a walk, and as it reached the Buddha, the great beast, completely pacified by the power of metta, knelt down before him. This story shows us that loving kindness is the ultimate strength, a fearlessness that can tame the wild beasts of hatred and violence, both within our own minds and in the world around us. Through the practice of metta, we become a source of warmth and safety in the world. We transform our inner landscape from a place of defense and scarcity to one of connection and abundance. We learn that we do not need to wait for the world to be kind to us. We can be the source of that kindness ourselves. This proactive cultivation of goodwill prepares us for the next evolution of the heart. For when we truly and sincerely wish for others to be happy, a new question arises. What is our response when we actually see them achieve happiness and success? In a world conditioned by comparison and competition, the default reaction is often envy. But the path of the heart offers a far more joyful alternative. It is the ability to celebrate the good fortune of others as if it were our own. This noble and beautiful quality is known as sympathetic joy. With a heart that has been softened by compassion and warmed by loving kindness, we arrive at the next stage of our journey. We have cultivated the sincere wish for all beings to be free from suffering and the active wish for them to be happy. But now we face a crucial test. What happens when that wish comes true? What is our honest, immediate, gut-level reaction when we see someone else succeed, find joy, or receive the very thing we have been longing for? For many of us, if we are truly honest, the feeling that arises is not one of pure joy. It is a complex, painful, and often secret emotion. It is the tightening in the chest, the souring of the mood, the quiet bitterness that comes with seeing another's good fortune. This is the poison of envy. In a world that relentlessly teaches us to compare and compete, envy is a common and deeply ingrained human suffering. The Buddhist path offers a beautiful and powerful antidote to this poison. It is a quality of the heart, known as mudita, or sympathetic joy. It is the genuine, unselfish delight in the happiness and success of others. Envy is one of the most isolating of all emotions. It builds a wall between our heart and the heart of another. It creates a painful, zero-sum game in our minds, a toxic belief that the world operates on a principle of scarcity. This is the scarcity mindset, the deeply ingrained assumption that happiness, success, and love are limited resources, like pieces of a finite pie. If you get a large piece, there is necessarily less for me. This belief system makes it impossible to truly celebrate another's good fortune, as it always feels like a personal loss. Envy keeps us fixated on what we lack, breeding a constant sense of dissatisfaction and resentment. It does absolutely nothing to harm the person we envy, but it poisons our own heart, turning the potential for connection into an experience of bitter separation. Our modern world, and especially the landscape of social media, has become a powerful engine for this kind of suffering. We are constantly presented with the curated highlight reels of other people's lives, their perfect vacations, their successful careers, their happy relationships. It is a relentless stream of comparison that can easily fuel a deep sense of inadequacy and envy, leaving us feeling that our own life is somehow lacking. The practice of mudita is a revolutionary act of defiance against this culture of comparison. It is the conscious cultivation of an abundance mindset. It is the radical and liberating understanding that happiness is not a finite commodity. The joy of another person does not diminish your own. The light of their candle does not extinguish yours. In fact, the opposite is true. Joy is boundless. By learning to connect with and celebrate the happiness of others, we dramatically increase the amount of joy available to us in our own lives. We are no longer limited to the scarce moments of our own personal success. Suddenly, the entire world's happiness becomes a source of nourishment for our own heart. Every success, every moment of beauty, every instance of joy we witness becomes an opportunity for us to feel joy as well. This is a profound shift from a life of competition to a life of connection. It is choosing to be part of a symphony of shared happiness, rather than a soloist anxiously guarding their own small part. Like the other qualities of the heart, mudita is a skill that can be developed with practice. The first and most crucial step is simply to notice, with mindfulness, when the feeling of envy arises. Instead of immediately acting on it or feeling ashamed of it, we can simply acknowledge it without judgment. Here is that familiar feeling of envy. This simple recognition creates a space, a moment of choice. In that moment, we can consciously pivot from envy to mudita. We can bring the other person and their good fortune to mind, and instead of focusing on our own feeling of lack, we can try to imagine what it feels like for them. We can try to connect with their feeling of happiness, their sense of accomplishment. We can then use intentional phrases to water this seed of sympathetic joy. We can silently say to them in our minds, "How wonderful for you. I am so happy that you are happy. May your joy and success continue to grow." At first, this might feel mechanical or even insincere, But with persistent, gentle practice, the heart begins to soften, the phrases start to feel more authentic, and moments of genuine, unselfish joy begin to bubble up. The easiest place to begin this practice is with someone you love deeply. Think of the pure, unadulterated delight a parent or grandparent feels when watching a small child take their very first wobbly steps. Their heart swells with joy. There is no trace of envy, no comparison, no thought of, why can't I walk with that same charming clumsiness? There is only pure celebration. Their success is your joy. This beautiful, natural feeling is mudita. We have all experienced it. We all have this capacity within us. The formal practice of mudita is simply learning to recognize this feeling and then consciously expanding its reach. From a beloved friend or family member, we can extend it to a colleague who receives praise, to an acquaintance who shares good news, and, in its most advanced form, even to a rival who achieves a great success. To be able to genuinely wish a competitor well is a sign of profound inner freedom. It liberates you from the exhausting burden of resentment and allows you to walk your own path with a lighter, more joyful heart. Mudita, then, is the practice of learning to celebrate life wherever we see it flourishing. It is the heart's joyful yes to the good fortune of the world. It is the direct antidote to the isolating poison of envy, comparison, and resentment. It opens us up to a vastly larger field of happiness than we could ever find by focusing only on ourselves. So now, our journey of the heart has led us through 3 of the 4 great sublime states. We have learned compassion, the heart's response to suffering. We have learned loving kindness, the heart's proactive wish for happiness. And we have learned sympathetic joy, the heart's celebration of happiness when it appears. These 3 qualities create a heart that is immensely warm, open, and connected. But for this open heart to be truly wise and resilient, it needs one final element. It needs a container of profound balance, a quality that can keep it steady in the face of life's inevitable disappointments. What happens when our compassion cannot alleviate suffering? What happens when our wishes for happiness are not fulfilled? What happens when there is no joy to celebrate? To navigate these moments without losing our peace, we need the 4th and final sublime state, the great stabilizer and protector of the heart. This quality is known as equanimity. We have walked the beautiful paths of the heart, learning to meet suffering with compassion, to wish for happiness with loving kindness, and to celebrate that happiness with sympathetic joy. These 3 qualities create a heart that is warm, open, and deeply connected to all of life. They are the engine and the sails of our spiritual vessel, filled with a powerful and radiant energy. But any sailor knows that a ship with powerful sails also needs a deep, heavy keel to keep it stable, and a firm rudder to hold its course through any storm. Without this stability, the very power of the sails could cause the ship to capsize in rough seas. In the journey of the heart, this essential, balancing quality, the protector of all the others, is known as equanimity, or rupekkha. At first glance, equanimity can be easily misunderstood. It can sound like indifference, detachment, or a cold, uncaring aloofness. But true equanimity is the furthest thing from indifference. It is not the closing of the heart, but the result of a heart that has become so open, so vast, and so wise that it is no longer thrown off balance by the changing winds of life. It is the pinnacle of love. Indifference is a state of numbness, a refusal to feel, born from fear and a desire to protect a fragile self. It is a form of aversion. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born from courage, connection, and profound understanding. It arises from the deep, experiential insight into the truths we have already explored on this journey. Because the equanimous mind truly understands impermanence, it does not panic when pleasant situations fade or when difficult ones arise. Because it understands the illusion of the separate self, it does not take everything so personally. And because it understands the law of karma, it has a deep, trusting respect for the unfolding of life. Equanimity is the spaciousness of mind that allows all of life's experiences to arise and pass away without resistance. It is the vast, silent, and loving sky that can hold the whitest clouds of joy, the darkest storms of grief, and everything in between, without being changed by them. It is not a cold shoulder, but a warm, unconditional embrace of reality as it is. The wisdom of equanimity acts as the guardian and protector of the other three sublime states, making them boundless and sustainable. It protects compassion from burnout. A heart full of compassion, without the balance of equanimity, can be overwhelmed by the immense suffering of the world. We can take on the pain of others as our own, leading to a state of exhaustion and despair, known as compassion fatigue. Equanimity provides the spaciousness to bear witness to suffering we cannot change, to offer what help we can, and to remain peaceful and resilient without shutting down our hearts. It is the wisdom that knows we can care deeply without carrying the entire world on our shoulders. Equanimity protects loving kindness from becoming mere attachment. If our wish for our loved ones to be happy is not balanced by equanimity, we can become consumed with anxiety when they face difficulties, or shattered by grief when they suffer. Our love becomes biased, extending only to our people. Equanimity universalizes our loving kindness. It allows us to hold all beings in our heart with impartial goodwill, wishing them well, but understanding that we do not control their paths. It is the foundation for a love that is truly unconditional, a love that frees both ourselves and others. And equanimity protects our sympathetic joy from turning into sadness. If we rejoice in another's success without an understanding of impermanence, we may feel sad or disappointed for them when their good fortune eventually changes. Equanimity allows us to celebrate the happiness of others fully and wholeheartedly in the present moment, without clinging to it or demanding that it last forever. It lets us enjoy the beautiful display of fireworks without grieving when the show is over. In this way, equanimity is the great harmonizer of the heart, ensuring that our compassion, love, and joy are rooted in wisdom, making them unshakable. The practice of equanimity is the practice of letting go of our attachment to outcomes. It is the art of acting with our whole heart and then releasing the results. We tend to our garden with the utmost skill and care. We plant the seeds of kindness. We water them with our attention. We protect them with our effort. But we understand that we do not control the harvest. The weather, the quality of the soil, the mysterious unfolding of life itself will all play their part. We do our best, and we let go of the rest. This brings an incredible sense of peace into our lives, freeing us from the constant anxiety of trying to manage the unmanageable. The core contemplation for developing equanimity is a deep reflection on the nature of karma. We can bring to mind the classic teaching: all living beings are the owners of their actions, the heirs of their action. Their action is the womb from which they are born. Their action is their friend and their protector. Whatever action they perform, whether for good or for ill, to that they will be the heir. This is not a cold or fatalistic teaching. It is an expression of the deepest respect for the autonomy and the individual journey of every being. It reminds us that while we can love, support, guide, and help others, we cannot walk their path for them. We cannot make their choices for them, nor can we ultimately shield them from the consequences of those choices. It is the wisdom of a loving parent who allows their child to fall down so they can learn to walk on their own. The classic image for a mind imbued with equanimity is that of a great, solid mountain. Imagine a mountain standing majestic and immovable at the center of the world. The winds blow from all four directions, carrying with them rain, heat, snow, and dust. Great storms rage against its slopes. Lightning flashes in the sky above it. But the mountain remains utterly stable, unshaken, secure in its own being. In our lives, we are constantly battered by what are called the 8 worldly winds: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. The ordinary, unprotected mind is constantly tossed about by these winds, elated by praise one moment, crushed by blame the next. But the mind that is grounded in equanimity is like that great mountain. It experiences the windsit, feels the pleasure, It feels the pain, but it is not knocked off its center. It remains stable, spacious, and at peace. Equanimity is the crown jewel of the heart practices. It is the calm, quiet, and profoundly loving space that allows us to be open to the fullness of life, to its 10,000 joys and its 10,000 sorrows without breaking. It is the source of an unshakable peace that does not depend on external conditions. Now that we have explored this rich inner landscape of the heart and learned how to cultivate these 4 sublime states, our journey calls us to bring them forth. How do these inner qualities of compassion, love, joy, and balance translate into tangible actions in the world? The most fundamental practice for expressing these states, for breaking down the walls of the ego, and for weaving ourselves back into the web of life, is the simple, profound, and joyful act of generosity. Having cultivated the 4 sublime states of the heart, compassion, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and the balancing wisdom of equanimity, your inner world begins to shift. It becomes a place of greater warmth, connection, and stability. The natural next step on the path is to allow these beautiful inner qualities to flow outwards, to manifest in our tangible, everyday actions. The most fundamental and direct expression of a heart cultivated in love and wisdom is the practice of generosity, known in Pali as dana. In our culture, we often think of generosity as a moral duty, a charitable obligation we fulfill, sometimes reluctantly. But in the context of the spiritual path, dana is not a duty. It is a profound practice of the heart, a joyful celebration of interconnectedness, and a powerful medicine that directly counteracts the poison of grasping, selfishness, and the illusion of the separate self. The practice of generosity is far more vast and accessible than simply giving away money. It is a quality of the heart that can be expressed in countless ways, available to every single one of us, regardless of our material wealth. There is, of course, the giving of material things, offering food to the hungry, shelter to the homeless, or financial support to a worthy cause. This is a vital and beautiful expression of dana. But we can also practice the giving of our time, which is often our most precious resource. This is the gift of volunteering for a cause you believe in, of helping a friend in need, of caring for a sick family member without resentment. In our chronically distracted world, one of the most profound gifts we can offer is the gift of our full attention. To listen to another person completely, without interrupting, without formulating your response while they are talking, without checking your phone. This is a rare and precious gift. It is the gift of making another person feel truly seen and heard. We can also practice the giving of our knowledge and skills, sharing what we have learned to help others on their path. And perhaps the highest forms of giving are the giving of comfort and the giving of fearlessness. When you have cultivated a calm and peaceful presence within yourself, you share it automatically with those around you. Your own lack of fear creates a safe harbor for others, a space where they too can feel less anxious and more at ease. You give these gifts not by doing anything, but by being a locus of peace in the world. Dana, therefore, is an attitude of an open and giving hand, a readiness to share whatever resources we have, be they material, emotional, or spiritual, for the well-being of others. The profound beauty of this practice is that the act of giving is its own reward. The ego, our sense of a separate self, is built and maintained by the act of grasping, hoarding, and identifying with things as me and mine. The act of giving is a direct counter-motion to this core habit of the ego. Every time we give freely, we loosen that tight, clenched fist of self-centeredness just a little bit. In that moment of selfless giving, the rigid boundary between me and you becomes soft and porous. A feeling of warmth, joy, and deep connection naturally arises. This is the joy of dana. It is a clean, wholesome happiness that stands in stark contrast to the fleeting, often anxious pleasure of acquiring something new. The thrill of a new purchase fades quickly, but the memory of a truly generous act remains in the mind as a source of light, self-respect, and inner wealth for a long time to come. It is the direct, experiential proof that letting go feels far better than holding on. As with all actions, the intention behind the gift is more important than the gift itself. The karmic fruit of a generous act is determined by the quality of the mind during the act of giving. If we give in order to receive praise or recognition, we are simply strengthening the ego. If we give out of a sense of guilt or unwilling obligation, we may be watering the seeds of resentment. If we give with a feeling of superiority, looking down upon the recipient, we are reinforcing the poison of pride. But when we give with a heart full of genuine compassion, with respect for the recipient, and with no thought of reward, the act becomes a powerful force for purifying the mind. It is better to give a small gift with a large heart than a large gift with a small heart. This practice is the most powerful antidote to the hypnotic spell of modern consumerism. Our society relentlessly bombards us with the message that happiness lies in acquiring, consuming, and possessing. It creates a deep-seated psychology of lack, a constant feeling that we are not enough and that we need something from the outside to make us whole. This keeps us trapped in a painful and exhausting cycle of craving and disappointment, always asking the question, what can I get? The practice of dana completely flips this orientation on its head. It retrains the mind to ask a different, more joyful question, what can I give? This simple shift in perspective is revolutionary. It moves us from a mindset of scarcity to one of true abundance. We begin to realize that even when we have very little, we are never truly impoverished. We always have something to offer, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, a moment of our time. This realization breaks the chains of materialism and allows us to discover a sense of wealth that has nothing to do with our bank account. There is a beloved story that illustrates the power of pure intention in giving. During a great festival, many wealthy patrons, including the king, made lavish offerings of expensive oil to light thousands of lamps in honor of the Buddha. A poor, elderly beggar woman watched the celebrations, her heart filled with devotion. She longed to make an offering as well, but she had nothing. She spent the entire day begging, and at last she collected just a few tiny coins, enough to buy the smallest possible amount of oil. She took it to the lamp seller, who was at first dismissive, but seeing the pure sincerity in her eyes, he gave her a little oil. She found a small, discarded clay dish for a lamp and lit it, placing it among the great, blazing lamps of the king and the merchants. As she did so, she made a silent, powerful vow in her heart. I have nothing else to offer. I offer this small light, and with it, my heart's deepest wish, that all beings may one day be free from the darkness of ignorance. That night, a fierce storm swept through the area. The wind howled and extinguished all the magnificent lamps. The kings, the merchants, all of them went dark. But in the morning, one small light was still burning, its flame clear, steady, and brilliant. The Buddha's disciples were amazed and tried to put it out, but they could not. The Buddha then explained, "You cannot extinguish that lamp. It is fueled not by simple oil, but by a heart of boundless, selfless generosity." The other offerings were great, but they may have been mixed with pride or a desire for recognition. Her offering was tiny, but it was everything she had, and it was given with a completely pure heart. It is the intention, not the size of the gift, that gives it its true light. Dana, therefore, is the joyful practice of an open heart and an open hand. It is the direct, tangible expression of our interconnectedness, a practice that simultaneously benefits others and frees ourselves from the prison of the ego. As we learn to loosen our grip on me and mine through this joyful act of giving, our mind naturally becomes lighter, clearer, and more spacious. This newfound clarity allows us to look even more deeply into the very nature of reality itself. With a mind less cluttered by self-interest, we can begin to approach one of the most subtle, profound, and ultimately liberating insights of the Buddhist path. This is the wisdom that reveals the radical interdependence of all phenomena, the wisdom of emptiness. The practice of generosity, of dana, begins to soften the hard edges of the ego. As we learn to give freely, the tight fist of me and mine begins to relax, and a new sense of spaciousness can enter the mind. Into this clear, open space, we can now invite one of the most profound, subtle, and ultimately liberating insights of the spiritual path. It is an insight that goes to the very root of reality itself. It is the wisdom of what is called sunyata, or emptiness. Now, this word, emptiness, can be frightening. In the English language, it conjures images of a cold, desolate void, a meaningless nothingness. It can sound like a philosophy of nihilism and despair, but in the context of Buddhist wisdom, its meaning is almost the exact opposite. It is not a statement about the absence of life, but a statement about the nature of life. Emptiness is not a void. It is a description of a dynamic, vibrant, and radical interdependence. It does not mean that things do not exist. It means that they do not exist in the solid, separate, and independent way we perceive them to. To understand this, let us begin by stating clearly what emptiness is not. It is not nothingness. The teaching of emptiness means that all things are empty of something. They are empty of a separate, independent, unchanging self-nature. To illustrate this, let us look deeply at a simple object, like a sheet of paper. When we look at this paper, our ordinary mind sees a distinct, separate object, but a mind that looks with wisdom sees something far more miraculous. Let us ask, what is this paper made of? We know it is made from a tree, so the tree is in the paper. But the tree could not have grown without the sun, so the sunlight is in the paper. The tree needed rain to nourish it, so the clouds and the water are in the paper. The tree grew from the earth, so the minerals and nutrients of the soil are in the paper. Then there is the logger who cut down the tree. His labor, his energy, his breath are all here in this sheet of paper. And the logger needed his parents to be born. He needed food to have the strength to work, so the wheat in his bread and the farmers who grew it are also in this paper. The people who drove the trucks, the people who worked in the paper mill, the person who invented the machinery, the entire economic and social system that allowed this paper to be produced and sold, all of it is present, right here in this seemingly simple object. If you were to begin a process of deconstruction, if you were to give back all the non-paper elements that make up this paper, if you returned the sunlight to the sun, the water to the clouds, the life force to the tree, the labor to the logger, the minerals to the earth, what would be left? Nothing. There would be no paper. The paper, therefore, is empty of a separate, isolated self. It is entirely made up of non-paper elements. It is full of the entire cosmos. Its existence is completely dependent on everything else. In this sense, emptiness is a synonym for total interdependence. Now, let us turn this powerful lens of inquiry upon ourselves. We look in the mirror and see a solid, separate person, an I. But are you any different from the sheet of paper? Look at your physical body. It is made of the food you have eaten, the water you have drunk, the air you are breathing, the sun, the earth, the rain, and the work of countless other beings are all present in the cells of your body at this very moment. Look at your mind, your feelings, your thoughts, your opinions. Where did they come from? They have come from your parents, your teachers, your friends, your culture, the books you have read, the movies you have watched. Every idea you hold as your own is a continuation of an endless stream of causes and conditions that began long before you were born. Your very consciousness depends on there being objects to be conscious of. Without sights there is no seeing. Without sounds there is no hearing. Just like the paper, if you were to give back all the non-you elements that make up your being, the food, the air, the parental care, the education, the language, the culture, what would be left of this separate you? You would find that you, too, are empty of an independent self. You are a manifestation of the entire universe. This is not a teaching that diminishes you. It is a teaching that expands you infinitely. You are not just this small, fragile ego you have been taught to believe you are. You are the universe, experiencing itself. Another beautiful way to understand this is with the image of a wave on the ocean. A wave has a distinct identity. We can point to it. It has a beginning as it rises from the sea, a middle as it crests and curls, and an end as it dissolves into the shore. We can say, Look at that beautiful wave. But what is the wave's true substance? Its substance is water. Has the wave ever, for one moment, been separate from the ocean? Number, its very existence, its form, its power, is simply the ocean expressing itself in a temporary pattern. A wave might be afraid of crashing on the shore. It might fear its own death, its own end. But if the wave were to realize its true nature as water, it would lose all fear. Water cannot be born and cannot die. It can only change its form. We are like that wave. We have a name, a body, a life story that rises and falls. We fear our end. But if we can realize that our true nature is not the temporary wave of this individual life, but the vast, timeless ocean of existence itself, then our fear of birth and death begins to dissolve into a profound and peaceful trust in the flow of life. Understanding emptiness, even intellectually at first, begins to dissolve the hard, artificial boundaries we draw everywhere. The line between me and you, inside and outside, self and other, starts to become soft and permeable. If the cloud is in the paper, and I am holding the paper, then the cloud is in me. If the suffering of another person enters my awareness through a news story or a conversation, their suffering is now a part of my own conscious process. We see that we are not separate observers looking at an external world, but that the world is arising both around us and within us simultaneously. This is the foundation of true, non-sentimental ethics. To harm another being is, in a very real sense, to harm a part of the whole that you are also a part of. To help another is to help yourself. It is the dawning of a deep ecological consciousness that recognizes the seamless web of all existence. The wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata, is therefore not a bleak and empty void. It is the liberating realization of radical, vibrant interdependence. It tells us that nothing can exist by itself, for itself. Everything in the cosmos contains everything else. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh coined a beautiful word to capture the positive and dynamic essence of this teaching. He called it interbeing, because everything is empty of a separate self. Everything must, by necessity, be with everything else. To be is to be. This insight takes us from the seemingly abstract philosophy of emptiness and lands us directly in the warm, breathing, and living reality of our next exploration, the great, shimmering, and inescapable web of interconnectedness. The profound wisdom of emptiness has revealed to us that nothing exists in isolation. The sheet of paper is full of the cosmos. The wave is never separate from the ocean. We have deconstructed the illusion of the separate self and found in its place not a void, but a universe of vibrant, dynamic relationship. To give a name to this living, breathing reality of emptiness, we can use the beautiful term coined by the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing. This word is not just a philosophical concept. It is a direct description of reality. It means that to be is to be. My existence is not a standalone event. My being is deeply interwoven with the being of the sun, the clouds, the earth, my ancestors, and you. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is the literal truth of our existence. To truly understand this is to see the world and our place in it in a completely new and transformative light. When we grasp the reality of interbeing, we realize that there is no such thing as a truly private or isolated action. Every thought we think, every word we speak, every action we take, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, sends ripples out across the vast, interconnected web of life. Think of a genuine, heartfelt smile offered to a stranger on the street. That small act of warmth may lift their spirits, causing them to be a little more patient with a colleague at work. That colleague, in turn, may go home with a lighter heart and speak more kindly to their child. That kindness can ripple outwards in ways we can never trace and will never know. In the same way, a single harsh word, an act of impatience, or a moment of selfishness also sends out its own ripples of coldness and separation, contributing to the world's suffering in subtle ways. This understanding doesn't need to be a heavy burden of responsibility. Instead, It can be an empowering and beautiful realization of our own significance. It means that our small, daily choices matter. By cultivating peace and kindness in our own small corner of the web, we are contributing to the peace and kindness of the entire web. This truth of interbeing completely dissolves the artificial boundary we have constructed between ourselves and our environment. We tend to think of nature as something out there, a collection of resources for us to use, or a beautiful landscape for us to visit. Interbeing shows us that this separation is a dangerous illusion. Consider your own breath, right now. The oxygen you are breathing in was a gift from the trees, the algae, and the plankton of the world. It is their out-breath. And the carbon dioxide you are now breathing out is a gift that you are offering back to the trees, the nourishment they need to live. Where do you end and the tree begin? The air is the sacred bridge that reveals we are all part of one single planetary respiratory system. Look at the food on your plate. It is the embodiment of the sun, the rain, and the soil. When you eat, you are literally consuming the cosmos, transforming the environment into your own flesh and blood. To pollute the rivers is, therefore, to poison our own circulatory system. To cut down the forests is to destroy our own lungs. There is no out there. Harming the environment is a direct act of self-harm. Caring for the planet is the most fundamental act of self-care. This profound understanding of our interconnectedness is the ultimate foundation for a life of ethics. In the Buddhist view, morality is not based on a set of divine commandments or a fear of punishment from an external authority. It is based on a clear and pragmatic seeing of the way things are. When you truly see and feel that you are not separate from others, the entire basis for causing harm collapses. Harming another being, whether through violence, harsh words, or exploitation, becomes as absurd and painful as having your right hand intentionally injure your left hand. It is an act of inner conflict, a tearing of the very fabric of which you yourself are woven. Conversely, acting with compassion, kindness, generosity, and honesty ceases to be a moral chore you should do. It becomes the most natural, wise, and joyful way to live. It is the simple act of aligning your own conduct with the fundamental harmony of the universe. It is the recognition that helping another is to heal the whole, which includes yourself. There is a magnificent and ancient image from the scriptures that captures the essence of interbeing. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net stretching out infinitely in all directions. At every single node where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly clear, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that every jewel reflects every other jewel in the entire, infinite expanse. There is not a single jewel that is not reflected in all the others. And if you were to look closely into the polished surface of any one jewel, you would see within it the reflections of all the other countless jewels, each one containing the reflections of all the others, and so on, ad infinitum. The whole is present in every part. We are those jewels. Each of us, in our being, reflects all of life, and all of life is reflected in us. Your joy is not yours alone. It contains the joy of all beings. Your sorrow is not yours alone. It contains the sorrow of the world. What happens to the most distant, forgotten person on the planet is, in some subtle but real way, happening to us. There is no escape from our beautiful, intricate, and sometimes heartbreaking interconnectedness. To live with an awareness of interbeing is to walk through the world with a sense of reverence, kinship, and profound responsibility. We are not isolated individuals bumping into each other in a meaningless void. We are intimately woven together, co-creating our world in every moment with our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. This is not just a comforting philosophy, it is a direct call to action. It asks us, now that we see this truth, how then shall we live? How can we speak in a way that weaves connection instead of division? How can we act in a way that honors this sacred web? And how can we earn a living in a way that contributes to the well-being of the whole rather than causing harm? These practical, ethical questions bring us back from the cosmic view and into the heart of our everyday lives, to the very practical guidance offered in the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, The profound vision of interbeing, of the shimmering, interconnected web of all existence, is not meant to be a mere philosophical idea to be admired from a distance. It is a truth that calls us to action, that asks us to change the way we live. If we are truly woven from the same fabric, if my well-being is inseparable from yours, then how should we walk through this world? How should we use our words, our bodies, and our time? The Buddha's answer to this question is the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical and comprehensive roadmap for living a life of wisdom and compassion. This path is not a set of rigid commandments to be blindly obeyed, but a curriculum for cultivation, a gradual training of the heart and mind. We will now explore three crucial limbs of this path that govern our direct engagement with the world, the limbs that allow us to translate the vision of interbeing into our everyday reality: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Let us begin with right speech. Our words are powerful creative forces. With them, we can build bridges of connection or dig trenches of division. We can soothe a wounded heart or inflict a wound of our own. A mind that understands interbeing naturally seeks to use language as an instrument of healing and harmony. Right speech is often understood as simply not telling lies, and while that is its foundation, the practice is far more subtle and comprehensive. It asks us to first refrain from 4 types of harmful speech. First, we avoid false speech, which means not only avoiding outright lies, but also exaggeration, deception, and any use of words to manipulate the truth for personal gain. Second, we avoid divisive speech. This is the poison of gossip, slander, and any language, spoken or written, that is intended to set one person or group against another. It is a direct assault on the truth of our interconnectedness. Third, we avoid harsh speech. This is the use of words as weapons insults, yelling, ridicule, and cruel sarcasm. It is language that comes from a place of anger and is intended to cause pain. Finally, we avoid idle chatter, the practice of filling every moment with meaningless noise, speaking without purpose or mindfulness. Having abandoned these harmful forms of speech, we then actively cultivate their wholesome opposites. Instead of falsehood, we speak what is true, reliable, and helpful. Instead of divisive speech, we use our words to promote harmony, to reconcile those who are in conflict, and to speak of the good qualities of others. Instead of harsh speech, we train ourselves to speak with kindness, gentleness, and courtesy, choosing words that are soothing and supportive. And instead of idle chatter, we learn to value silence, speaking only when our words are meaningful and beneficial. Before speaking, we can pass our intention through a wise filter. Is what I am about to say true? Is it beneficial? And is this the right and skillful time to say it? In our world of constant communication, of social media comments, and instant messages, the practice of right speech is more vital than ever. It is the conscious choice to make every word we utter an offering of peace to the world. Next, we come to right action. If right speech is the harmonization of our voice with the truth of interbeing, then right action is the harmonization of our body. It is the practice of allowing our physical deeds to be an expression of compassion and respect for all life. The foundation of right action is often described in terms of what to avoid: abstaining from taking life, from taking what is not given, and from sexual misconduct. But like right speech, the practice is truly fulfilled in its positive cultivation. To abstain from taking life grows into a profound reverence for all life. It is not just about not killing other humans, but about extending our compassion to all creatures, minimizing our harm to animals and the environment, and actively working to protect and preserve life wherever we can. To abstain from taking what is not given evolves into the beautiful practice of generosity, or dana. It means not stealing, but it also means being honest in all our business dealings, respecting the property of others, and cultivating a heart that delights in giving rather than getting. To abstain from sexual misconduct blossoms into a deep respect for our own sexual energy and for the hearts and commitments of others. It means using our sexuality in a way that is founded on kindness, consent, and care, avoiding any form of exploitation or harm. And supporting all these actions is the practice of abstaining from intoxicants that cloud the mind. A mind that is clouded by drugs or alcohol is not capable of practicing right speech or right action with consistency. Cultivating clarity is essential for walking the path with awareness and integrity. Right action is, quite simply, choosing to cause no harm and, wherever possible, to be a source of help and safety for others. Finally, we arrive at right livelihood. For most of us, our work is where we spend the majority of our waking hours. The practice of right livelihood is the challenge of integrating our spiritual values into this vast and important area of our lives. It asks us to find a way to earn a living that does not cause harm to ourselves or to other beings. The Buddha explicitly named 5 types of livelihood to be avoided: dealing in weapons, dealing in living beings, which includes slavery and the slaughter of animals for profit, dealing in meat on a large scale, dealing in poisons, and dealing in intoxicants. The underlying principle is clear. We should avoid any profession that directly profits from the suffering, addiction, or death of others. In our complex modern world, the application of right livelihood calls for deep and honest inquiry. The positive cultivation of this path is to, as much as possible, find work that is beneficial to society and does not violate our core ethical values. It is about seeing our work as a form of service. We must acknowledge, however, that not everyone has the luxury of choosing their perfect, ethically pristine job. The practice, then, is not just about what we do, but how we do it. Whatever our work may be, we can still practice right livelihood within it. We can strive to be honest and diligent. We can treat our colleagues, customers, and clients with kindness and respect. We can refuse to participate in dishonest or harmful practices within our industry. We can bring our full mindfulness to our tasks, transforming our work from a source of stress into a field of practice. Right livelihood is the commitment to walk through our professional life with the same integrity and compassion that we cultivate in our personal life. These 3 practices, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, are how we take the sublime vision of into being and make it real. They are how we stop tearing holes in the sacred web of life and begin to consciously weave it with threads of truth, kindness, and peace. They are not about achieving a state of rigid perfection, but about having a clear and compassionate direction for our lives. Now, having explored the vital work of aligning our external conductor words, our deeds, and our work with the deepest truths we have discovered, the path invites us to turn our gaze inward one last time. We are called to look with a new level of clarity at the very nature of the instrument that has been observing this entire journey. What is the nature of consciousness itself? The awareness that knows and experiences all of this. This final inquiry leads us to the heart of consciousness and the very stream of awareness. Our journey of understanding has taken us from the world outside to the world within. We have explored the way we speak, the way we act, and the way we work, learning to align our external lives with the deep, internal vision of interbeing. Now, for our final stage of inquiry, we turn our gaze fully inward to explore the ultimate mystery, the very ground of our experience. We turn to face the question, what is the nature of consciousness itself? What is this luminous, knowing quality that has been present through this entire journey? We tend to think of our consciousness, our awareness, as a thing, as the essential me that resides somewhere behind our eyes, looking out at the world. But as with all other phenomena we have examined, a closer look reveals something far more subtle, more fluid, and ultimately, more liberating. The first crucial step in understanding consciousness is to learn to distinguish between the contents of consciousness and consciousness itself. The contents are everything that appears on the screen of your awareness. Your thoughts, your memories, your plans for the future. They are your emotions. The flash of anger, the wave of sadness, the warmth of joy. They are your physical sensations. The feeling of pressure where you are sitting, the taste of coffee on your tongue, the pain in your knee. These contents are like the weather. They are constantly changing, shifting, and moving. One moment the sky of your mind is clear and sunny. The next it is dark and stormy. We spend almost all of our lives completely identified with this mental weather. We believe that we are the clouds. When an angry thought appears, we say, I am angry. When a sad feeling arises, we say, I am a sad person. We are tossed about by every passing cloud, every gust of wind, believing that our very identity is defined by this chaotic and unpredictable display. But the great wisdom of this path invites us to notice something else. In addition to the clouds, there is also the sky. There is the thought, and then there is the silent, effortless knowing of the thought. There is the feeling of anxiety, and then there is the spacious awareness in which that feeling is appearing. This awareness itself is fundamentally different from the thoughts and feelings it contains. It has no color, no shape, no size, no texture. It is like the vast, open sky. The sky is never harmed by the storm clouds that pass through it. It is never stained by their darkness, nor does it try to cling to the beautiful, fluffy white clouds when they appear. It simply allows all weather to come and go, remaining in its own nature as open, boundless, and accepting space. The great liberation in spiritual life comes from learning to shift our sense of identity. We learn to stop identifying as the fleeting, vulnerable cloud and begin to rest in our true nature as the vast, peaceful, and unshakable sky of awareness. When a dark cloud of sadness drifts across your inner sky, you no longer feel that you are fundamentally sad. Instead, you can recognize, sadness is present right now. A dark cloud is passing through the sky of my being. This creates a profound sense of freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of your own mental weather. To understand where these clouds, these mental contents, come from, we can turn to a beautiful psychological model from the Yogacara school of Buddhist thought. This model describes the mind as having different layers, the deepest of which is called the storehouse consciousness. You can imagine this as a vast, fertile field or a deep storehouse in the basement of your mind. Every single experience you have ever had and every intentional action or karma you have ever performed has planted a tiny seed in this storehouse. There are countless seeds buried here, seeds of anger, seeds of fear, seeds of jealousy, but also seeds of compassion, seeds of joy, seeds of understanding, and seeds of forgiveness. Most of the time, these seeds lie dormant. Our everyday thinking mind, what we might call mind consciousness, acts like a gardener. This gardener has habitual patterns. When we encounter a difficult situation, like someone cutting us off in traffic, our gardener of a mind has a habit of running down to the basement and watering the seed of anger. When that seed is watered with our attention and energy, it quickly sprouts, growing into a full-blown plant of anger that manifests as angry thoughts, angry feelings, and angry actions. This act of anger then, in turn, plants even more seeds of anger in the storehouse, strengthening the habit and creating a self-perpetuating cycle of suffering. But the practice of mindfulness gives us a new possibility. Mindfulness acts as a skillful gardener. Through mindfulness, we become aware of what the gardener is doing. We can catch the impulse, the moment we are about to water that seed of anger. We can choose, in that moment, not to feed it with our energy. We don't have to suppress it or pretend it isn't there, but we can refrain from nourishing it. Instead, we can consciously choose to go and water a different seed. We can water the seed of patience or the seed of understanding, recognizing that the other driver may also be suffering. Over time, as we consistently practice watering the wholesome seeds of compassion, joy, and peace, these plants grow strong and beautiful in the garden of our mind, and the unwholesome weeds of anger, fear, and despair, deprived of the water of our attention, begin to wither and lose their power over us. This is the mechanism of true, lasting transformation. We can also picture consciousness as a great, flowing river. You can never step into the exact same river twice, because the water is constantly moving, always new. And yet, we give the whole, continuous process a single, convenient name, like the River Thames or the Amazon. Consciousness is just like this. It is a moment-to-moment stream of knowing. Each moment of consciousness arises, knows its object for an instant, and then immediately ceases, giving rise to the next moment of consciousness in a seamless, unbroken flow. There is no solid, static knower that endures through time, just as there is no solid river separate from the flowing of water. There is only the flowing. The sense we have of a continuous self is like the name we give the Rivera useful label for an ever-changing process. This image beautifully captures the dynamic, fluid, and impermanent nature of our own awareness. To understand consciousness, then, is to cease seeing it as a thing we possess, and to instead recognize it as the luminous, knowing space in which our entire life unfolds. It is the sky that holds all of our mental weather. It is the river that is always flowing. Our practice is to learn to relax into this spacious, flowing nature, to find our home in the awareness itself, rather than being constantly carried away by the contents that appear within it. This deep, quiet investigation into the nature of knowing brings our journey of inquiry full circle. We have traveled from the simple, physical anchor of the breath to the deepest nature of consciousness itself. We have looked at suffering, its cause, and its cure. We have seen through the illusion of the separate self and touched the reality of our profound interconnectedness. So where does this entire journey lead? What does it feel like to live in the world with this understanding fully integrated into the fabric of one's being? It leads us, finally, to a state of profound peace and wakeful clarity, a state we can call awakened sleep. We have journeyed far together, exploring the nature of our unease, its origins in craving and clinging, and the profound truth that a cessation of this struggle is possible. We have walked the entirety of the Noble Eightfold Path, from the wisdom of right understanding to the deep focus of right concentration. We have examined the illusory nature of the self, the inescapable law of change, and we have opened our hearts with the divine abidings of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We have applied this ancient wisdom to the modern pressures of materialism and the intricate dance of our relationships. And so, we arrive at the final, and perhaps most crucial, stage of our exploration, the integration of this entire path into the fabric of our everyday lives. For what use is a beautiful map if it is left rolled up on a shelf? And what value does a powerful tool have if it remains locked away in a box, only to be admired on special occasions? The path is not meant to be a weekend retreat, a brief escape from the world. It is not a separate, spiritual compartment of our existence, cordoned off from the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of our jobs, our families, our commutes, and our grocery lists. The ultimate aim of the path is not to retreat from life, but to engage with it fully, to transform it from a source of unconscious reaction and stress into a field for conscious practice and awakening. The goal is to make your very life the monastery. The meditation hall is not a quiet room with a cushion, but the driver's seat of your car in a traffic jam. The teacher is not a distant guru, but the difficult colleague who tests your patience. The Dharma, the truth, is not found only in ancient texts, but in the feeling of warm water on your hands as you wash the dishes. This is where the real work and the real freedom lies. It begins by dismantling the artificial wall between practice time and regular life. We have been conditioned to see meditation as something we do for 20 minutes in the morning, and then we get on with our day, as if the two were unrelated. But the integration of the path means weaving the thread of mindfulness through every single moment. Consider the most mundane of activities, washing the dishes. For most of us, this is a chore to be rushed through. Our body is at the sink, but our mind is 1,000 miles away, replaying a conversation from work, worrying about a bill that is due, planning the next 3 things we have to do. We are not there. We are ghosts in our own kitchen. But this simple act can be transformed into a profound practice of right mindfulness. Instead of letting the mind wander, you can bring it home, right here, to the sink. You can consciously feel the warmth of the water on your skin. You can notice the smooth, cool surface of the plate in your hands. You can feel the texture of the sponge, the soft resistance of the bubbles. You can listen to the sound of the water rinsing the soap away. In these moments, you are not just washing a dish. You are practicing concentration. You are anchoring yourself in the present moment. You are training your mind to be where your body is. There is no stress in the simple act of washing a dish. The stress comes from the mental movies we play while doing it. By bringing your full attention to the task, you are not only cleaning a plate, you are cleansing your mind of its habitual distractions. This same principle can be applied to anything. Walking to your car becomes a practice in feeling the contact of your feet on the ground, the subtle shifts in balance, the feeling of the air on your skin. Eating a meal becomes an opportunity to truly taste your food, to notice the flavors and textures, to cultivate gratitude for the nourishment it provides, instead of mindlessly consuming it while staring at a screen. Every red light is not a frustration, but an invitation to take one conscious breath, to release the tension in your shoulders, to come back to the present moment. These are not small things. They are the very substance of our lives. By infusing these simple, repeated actions with mindful awareness, we are rewiring our brains, creating new neural pathways. We are shifting our default state from one of scattered, anxious distraction to one of grounded, peaceful presence. We are no longer waiting for life to begin. We are living it, one mindful moment at a time. Of course, life is not always as simple as washing a dish. It presents us with friction, with challenges, with people and situations that push our buttons and trigger our deepest conditioning. Here, too, the path is not about avoiding this friction, but about using it as the very whetstone upon which we sharpen our wisdom and compassion. That infuriating email from a coworker, the driver who cuts you off in traffic, the family member who knows exactly how to provoke you. Our autopilot response is to react with anger, defensiveness, or resentment. The mind immediately begins to spin its stories. They are so inconsiderate. They always do this. I am being disrespected. This is the fire of suffering, fanned by the winds of ego. But right effort, right mindfulness, and right understanding give us another choice. In that precious space between the trigger and our reaction, we can introduce a conscious pause. It might only be the length of a single in-breath and out-breath. In that pause, we can recognize the feeling of anger arising, not as my anger, but simply as anger. We can feel the heat in the chest, the clenching in the jaw, as impersonal sensations, as we practiced in the meditation on feelings. This is right mindfulness. In that pause, we can remember the truth of right understanding, that this other person is also a suffering being, driven by their own fears, insecurities, and conditioning. Their actions likely come not from a place of malice, but from their own internal chaos. This thought introduces a flicker of right thought, the intention of goodwill. We can then make a conscious choice. Instead of lashing out with a sharp reply, which will only escalate the conflict and poison our own mind, we can choose right speech. We can choose to wait, to respond later when we are calm, or to respond with a kindness that diffuses the situation. This is not weakness. It is immense strength. It is the strength to break the cycle of reactive suffering. Every time you successfully navigate such a moment, you are not just avoiding a fight. You are liberating yourself. There is a famous story that beautifully illustrates this principle of integrating the practice and not carrying our burdens. Two monks were traveling together, and they came to a wide, muddy river. A young woman stood there, hesitating, unsure how to cross without soiling her fine clothes. Without a word, the older, senior monk walked over, lifted the woman onto his shoulders, carried her across the river, and set her down gently on the other side. The woman thanked him and went on her way. The two monks continued their journey. The younger monk was visibly disturbed. He was seething with disapproval. His monastic vows strictly forbade him from touching a woman. How could his senior have done such a thing? He walked in agitated silence for hours, the scene replaying over and over in his mind. Finally, as evening approached, he could not contain himself any longer. He burst out, "Brother, why did you do that? You know we are not permitted to touch women. How could you break your vows like that by carrying that woman across the river?" The older monk looked at him with a calm, compassionate smile. "Brother," he said softly, "I put that woman down by the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story, is a perfect metaphor for our lives. We are the younger monk. We carry our resentments, our grudges, our anxieties, our regrets for hours, days, even years. The event is long past, but we keep it alive in our minds, allowing it to poison our present moment. The older monk represents the integrated path. He engaged with the situation directly and compassionately, did what was necessary, and then let it go completely. He was free. The practice is about learning to put the woman down. It's about dealing with the challenges of life as they arise, with as much skill and wisdom as we can muster, and then releasing our mental grasp on them, returning our minds to the peace and clarity of the present. This integration is a lifelong journey. It requires immense patience and, most importantly, a deep sense of self-compassion. There will be countless times when you forget. You will get lost in thought while washing the dishes. You will yell at the driver who cuts you off. You will send the angry email. You will carry the woman for miles. And in those moments, the practice is not to berate yourself. It is not to fall into guilt or despair, thinking, "I am no good at this." That is just another story, another layer of suffering. The practice, in that moment, is to simply notice, with kindness, there I was, lost in anger. There I was, carrying that burden again. And then, gently, without judgment, you begin again. You take one conscious breath. You feel your feet on the floor. You come back. Every moment is a new opportunity to begin again. The path is not about achieving a perfect, unbroken state of enlightened bliss. It is a practice, not a perfect. It is the gentle, persistent, and compassionate act of returning again and again and again to the present moment, to the truth of what is. This is how the mundane becomes sacred. This is how our struggles become our strength. This is how the entirety of our life, with all its messiness and its glory, becomes the path itself. You are not trying to get somewhere else. You are learning how to be fully and freely, right where you are. Our journey together is now drawing to a close. We began in the quiet desperation of a modern life, sitting in a dimly lit room, our faces illuminated by the pale, restless light of a screen, feeling the immense weight of a world that demands everything and offers little lasting peace. We felt adrift, overwhelmed, a ghost in our own existence. From that place of shadow, we embarked on a journey inward. We dared to look directly at our discontent, giving it a name, Dukkha, and in naming it, we began to understand it. We followed the thread of its origin to the very heart of our own minds, to the relentless, thirsty grasp of craving and the clinging to things that are destined to change. But we did not stop there. In that difficult diagnosis, we discovered a profound and liberating truth, the truth of cessation, the promise that the fires of greed, hatred, and confusion could, in fact, be cooled. And we were given a map, a practical, humane, and noble guide for that journey, the Eightfold Path. We walked its steps together, cultivating the wisdom to see clearly, the ethical conduct to walk harmlessly, and the mental discipline to steady the turbulent waters of the mind. And what is the destination of this path? The ultimate message distilled from this ancient stream of wisdom. It is this: peace is not something you can find outside of yourself. It is not a prize to be won, a goal to be achieved, a commodity to be purchased. It does not wait for you in a future promotion, a new relationship, or a bigger house. The frantic search for peace in the external world is the very activity that drives it away, like a hunter chasing his own shadow. The core teaching, the radical invitation of the Buddha, is that peace is not something to be acquired, it is something to be revealed. It is an intrinsic quality of your own mind, obscured by layers of conditioning, fear, and misunderstanding. It is the silence that is already present beneath all the noise. The path, therefore, is not a path of addition, but of subtraction. It is a process of gently letting go, of unlearning the habits of mind that create stress, of releasing the war against reality. The wisdom of Buddhism is not a doctrine to be believed, but an invitation to look, an invitation to investigate your own experience with honesty, courage, and a gentle heart, and to discover for yourself that the freedom you seek is already here. And so, we leave you where we began, in that same room, with that same life. But you are not the same. You are no longer a helpless victim of your circumstances or a prisoner to the endless stream of notifications on your screen. You have been given tools. You have the tool of mindfulness to anchor you in the present moment. You have the tool of compassion to soften your heart towards yourself and others. You have the tool of wisdom to see the changing, impersonal nature of your own thoughts and feelings, and in seeing this, to no longer be ruled by them. The path forward is not easy, but it is clear, and it is yours to walk. Every breath is a chance to come home. Every challenge is a chance to practice. Every moment is an opportunity to be free. The final instruction is the simplest of all. Put down the screen, look up, notice the light in the room, the feeling of the air on your skin, the simple, profound, miraculous fact of your own existence, right here, right now. This is where your peace resides.